Under the heavy rain, the grand mansion of the swordsman family appeared majestic, like an unyielding fortress amidst the storm where every paving stone bore the footprints of warriors with proud blood. Inside, the light quietly crept through the window frame, covering the small cradle where the descendant of the family was resting, a rare peaceful moment before the sword left its sheath. The man with a leader's aura stood there silently, his sharp eyes directed down at the cradle below. There the child slept peacefully like a small ray of light in the darkness, carrying a promise of an unwritten future. But the words that man uttered when speaking of a child were truly cold. It was a disgusting thing on the day that boy was born the man the boy would call father had looked down and said so to him. The greatest misfortune of the boy's life was being born on the same day and month as Kajin. The contrast between the lonely cold cradle and the large bed with warm blankets, soft pillows and servants surrounding it. Kajin was the child blessed by the sword god Keshak, possessing both appearance and talent. In another room, a woman in a red dress was holding the baby in her arms. She looked down at her child and coldly said, "If only you were Kajin, how wonderful it would be." The reason both father and mother were disappointed in the boy was because he was born without a right arm. Every night the mother still held him in her arms, sitting on the armchair by the window. And every such night she would whisper into the boy's ear, "Why don't you just die, my child?" Though still small, the boy already had his own consciousness and silently told his mother, "I am sorry, mother, but I really do not want to die." Hidden deep within this innocent smile was a burden of feelings. I have heard the words that my father spoke when I was still in my mother's womb. When she was pregnant, the father was always devoted and caring, and at the same time entrusted this child with our hope. He, with a twisted face, hostile and jealous eyes, furrowed his brows and growled, "All my life I can never match my brother, but perhaps my child will surpass his child." The father hoped his son could excel beyond Kajin, but from birth the boy had only one arm and moreover was not blessed by the gods, and so the boy became a disgrace, a stone crushing every hope of his parents. Our protagonist is exactly such a person. On a beautiful morning in the courtyard of the swordsman family mansion, the lady of the house was sitting at the table enjoying tea, while the maids, they smiled brightly, calling the boy, "Young Master Kajin, come here, young master, come over here, young master." Kajin, with golden hair, long eyelashes, and a radiant smile, was praised by the maids. "My goodness, when the young master smiles, he looks just like an angel." The mother of the one-armed Davin stood behind a tree looking toward the cheerful group with longing. Hidden beneath the brown hair covering her face was the jealousy of the young mother. Looking at her son rolling on the ground, she could only think to herself, "Kajin can already walk, while he is so slow." Some time later, when Davin barely managed to stand and take a step, the mother gloomily covered her face, saying, "Kajin can already hold a sword. What meaning is there now that you have just learned to walk?" And when the boy could finally hold a sword, she again showed disappointment. "Kajin has already mastered mana and is training in swordsmanship with the sword master Samian." In the deep, spiraling night, the cold blue light sketched the figure of Davin standing there with a wooden sword in hand, accompanied by the heartbreaking words, "His mother said to my God, if only my child were Kajin, how wonderful it would be." And so Kajin became someone Davin both envied and admired. By now the season had turned to winter, snow blanketing the mountain ranges. On a small road a carriage rolled quietly along. At the age of 7, Davin was sent away to become Kajin's attendant. Outwardly he was known as Kajin's supporting arm, standing by him as a cousin, but in reality Davin's parents had sold him for 300,000 luden. At this moment he stood there gasping for breath, his body covered in bleeding wounds. Davin was tied beneath a tree in the freezing winter without a single piece of clothing on, while the back of Kajin in a red cloak approached him. His eyes gleamed with cruelty, his hand raised the leather whip high, his mouth releasing mocking words, "And looking at yourself. This is the first time I have seen someone as pathetic as you." With that Kajin struck the whip hard toward him. From the very beginning Kajin never liked Davin, so he always used him as a target to vent his anger, whipping him while shouting, "Cry more, cry louder." But Davin always tried to hold back his tears, gritting his teeth, enduring no matter how much pain he felt. What was even more bitter was that the grown men who witnessed this scene merely turned away pretending not to see. They even joked and laughed. They stood there indifferently watching their master torment his cousin. There was something colder than the chill of winter itself, and that was the human heart, for here there was not a single adult at all. Returning to the mansion of the swordsman family, Davin's uncle was a truly distinguished man, but he had long left the family and never returned. Therefore no one here could restrain Kajin, causing him. The one sparring with Kajin struggled to withstand his fast and powerful strikes. He was continuously forced back under Kajin's excitement and agitation as Kajin attacked, while shouting, "It is because you are too slow." Soon the wooden stick in his hands was broken in half by Kajin. The wooden sword was placed on his shoulder, and he raised both hands in surrender. "All right, I gave up." His innate talent and the blessing of the sword god had become a poison that destroyed him. Kajin still delivered a crushing blow directly to the man's face, causing blood to spurt out. "Just admitting defeat ends it, huh?" He pointed the sword aside and ordered the next one. This time Kajin's target was his cousin Davin. The boy stepped forward, using his mouth to tie cloth around the hilt for extra grip, while thinking in his heart, "I am so envious of Kajin's strength and talent." Davin charged forward with his feelings inside. "I also want to become strong." The two wooden swords clashed, producing clattering sounds, one side carrying the determination of the one-armed boy, the other the smug smile of the genius blessed by the sword god. He snarled angrily and stopped staring at me like that. Then he swung and shoved Davin forcefully backward and shouted, "I despise you." He stepped toward him, his voice dropping low with resentment. "A pathetic cripple like you dares to look at me that way?" Along with a barrage of kicks came the continuing curses. "You think just by working hard you can defeat me? If you are so capable, then try." Kajin left a contemptuous challenge. "Someone like you, even if you try for a lifetime, will never be able to match me." Davin lay there enduring the painful kicks from him. His eyes shone with determination, silently vowing to himself, "I want to defeat him, I truly want to defeat him." But that dream could not be achieved through effort alone. Davin devoted nearly all his free time to training. On the contrary, as Kajin grew older, he neglected training, spending his days with women, drinking, and even indulging in stimulants, yet Davin still could not defeat him. Kajin was a depraved genius, while Davin was just a fool struggling in vain. The boy's eyes turned crimson. However, things could not remain that way forever. The scene shifted to the day of the competition for the younger generation of the swordsman family. At the center was the arena where the battle was taking place, surrounded by countless spectators cheering and shouting. In the arena, Kajin and Davin were directly clashing blow after blow, with waves of sword energy released by Kajin pressing Davin back. His face darkened as he unleashed a strike, slashing straight down. Though Davin managed to block the force, it was so overwhelming that it sent him sliding backward. Purple mana surged, enveloping his body and filling his eyes. Davin slashed down in a straight line toward his opponent. The explosive burst of mana forced Kajin to defend with difficulty, inwardly cursing, "Damn it." There appeared Davin, full of resolve, with eyes gleaming sharply. His face showed fury and determination, as if he was about to erupt into an unstoppable storm. Kajin, in his blazing red cloak, raised his sword to meet Davin's strike, the boy like a phantom from the abyss, carrying a force that made the entire space explode in a violent surge of violet lightning. After the clash, the whole arena seemed to burst apart, smoke and purple light engulfing everything. Two pairs of startled eyes followed the violet lightning that had just exploded within the arena. One of them opened wide in speechless astonishment. A loud voice resounded announcing Davin One Arm had defeated the storm sword Kajin, and on the arena floor Davin's blade was resting on his shoulder. Davin stood there breathing heavily and recalled that up until now he had lost to Kajin a total of 21 matches. But at this very moment, at the age of 29, he had finally managed to defeat him. Davin frowned, looking down, remembering how in all the previous makeshift duels he had always lost to Kajin, and how others constantly told him to give up, mocking and saying Davin was worthless, only wasting his time. But now at last he had beaten the one he always wanted to defeat. The entire arena was echoing endlessly with his name Davin. He stood there frowning, asking Kajin, "How much longer do you think you can keep boasting?" Rage was clear on Kajin's face. Even in defeat, he growled, "How could I possibly lose to a failure like you?" Davin's cold gaze looked down, thinking to himself of those words, the same words I have heard so often they filled my ears completely. When I was a child, my mother always said, "If only you were Kajin." The bitter words of his father also echoed in his mind at that moment, "If only my son were Kajin." Davin recalled his wretched past and told Kajin the failure before him, "If I were you, I would never live the way you do." His words drove him mad. His eyes glowed green, his voice growling in anger at "You bastard." But Davin did not stop. He continued speaking the truth. "If I were you, I would not waste my life on women, drinking, and addiction. I would live a meaningful life, leaving my footsteps carved upon the highest peak." After speaking the thoughts in his heart, Davin walked away, feeling relieved. At last I have won. He thought to himself it was all over, but then his eyes widened in confusion. A sudden thrust came from behind Kajin, the sword piercing through his abdomen, blood spurting endlessly as Kajin's face darkened with malice. The spectators who witnessed it were all utterly shocked. Amid the shadow of the two men consumed by hatred, voices of the crowd resounded. "What happened?" Kajin stabbed. But unexpectedly Davin smiled in reply. "Kajin, even at the very last moment you are still nothing but a coward." His whole body trembled violently, sweat pouring endlessly. He looked down at the sword piercing his chest and thought to himself, "It hurts, no, it hurts like death. At last I managed to defeat Kajin, and yet it seems I am finished." The sword bore a crimson cross symbol. It was called the Solar Sword, the treasured blade passed down only to the descendants of the Samian clan. The sword contained the mana of the Samian clan demon, repelling mana, and even if Saint Rayla herself appeared, Davin would have no chance of survival. He turned back to Kajin with blood-red eyes and a mocking smile. "You will carry for life the name of a loser, Kajin." Right after that, Davin's eyes dimmed and sank into darkness. The scene shifted to a cold and gloomy corridor, the walls lit by torch flames. Davin sat tied to a chair, slowly regaining consciousness, mumbling in confusion. "This is hell." A massive figure with horns on his head, chains wrapped around his body, spoke in a cold voice. "Hell, you say?" He continued, "You are lucky. Who would have expected the miraculous Saint Rayla to appear at the arena?" Davin frowned in shock, his face showing confusion as he uttered a saint. An image appeared of him lying within a magic circle with the holy woman beside him, along with the butcher's words, "The saint healed your mortal body with a miracle just like her name." Davin wondered why I am still alive, but my whole body has been destroyed. Now I can only breathe. The butcher, as if reading his thoughts, asked if you signed a contract with a demon. Davin was startled at his words. The butcher's eyes gleamed red as he continued, so surprised that only by signing a contract with a demon could a failure like you possibly defeat Kajin. The butcher sneered that your parents have already admitted it, so why bother denying? Davin's eyes narrowed as he recalled the image of his parents. Then he gave a smile full of discontent and weariness and muttered, "So that is how it is." The figure continued, "Blood and sacrificial offerings were found in your home. You are a demon who took the lives of 300 innocent children in exchange for power." The butcher pointed and loudly scolded Davin, "Young Master Kajin has killed you to protect the honor of the Samian family, personally executing his cousin as well as his childhood friend. Surely the young master must be very sorrowful." He sneered back, "I understand now. I defeated." The man took out a judgment paper. "Davin has stained the honor of the family. Therefore his mana will be sealed, and he will be sentenced to life imprisonment forever." This man opened his bloodshot eyes wide and gritted every word, preparing to be torn apart in the dungeon. Davin. After that, a jailer dragged him away in prisoner's clothes. The tendons in his arms and legs had been completely cut. His mana also sealed by many chains, and he was thrown into prison. Davin sat there, bound and his eyes covered. At this time, the creaking sound of the cell door opened. Light fell on his dark face. Davin sensed this and called Kajin's name. He stood there acting superior, looking at him with contempt. Kajin sneered, mocking, "This appearance suits you, Davin." He then announced in a lofty voice, "I have become the Sword King. People out there always praise me as an outstanding swordsman." Then Kajin leaned down and continued, "It's all thanks to you. Thank you, trash." After the day Kajin came to humiliate Davin, the amount of food brought to him decreased gradually. Davin, now with longer hair, sat leaning against the wall of the dark prison, sighing, "I'm so hungry." He suddenly coughed violently, raised his hand to cover his mouth, but still could not stop the blood from spurting out. Looking at the blood in his hand, Davin thought to himself, "If I must die, I want to die with my head held high." His thin body slowly tilted with regret. "I should have died at the arena." Davin lay face down there, his whole body weak and powerless, the dark and cold space enveloping him. His eyes half closed. Inside suddenly arose a question. If I had not lost one arm, would my life have been different? Davin began imagining the bright days when he had both arms. He would grip the wooden sword tightly before the cheers of the servants. If he were a child recognized, happily accepted by his parents. And if he were the child blessed by the sword god Keshak, would Davin's life be different? That was the big if appearing in his head. All that long time of endless effort, but the result is like this. But now his desire still does not stop. Davin does not want to die. He slowly closed his eyes, and the darkness prepared to cover everything. But a small light fell onto the pitch-black silent lake, together with Davin's desire, "I want to live." That spark now suddenly exploded like a star in the silent night, as if the moment of destiny had just been opened, where light not only guides but also shapes fate, together with Davin's affirmation, "No matter what, I absolutely will not die." Davin's eyes flew open, and in his ear rang the voice of a middle-aged man, an elder of the clan, asking, "Can you hear me?" The man grabbed his shoulder and called his name, Vinchin. He wondered if this pain was coming from his right hand. At that moment Davin looked at the man before him and wondered if this was a dream. If so, why did it feel so real? He recognized the man as an elder from one of the clan's branch families, and Davin silently questioned how he knew him. He frowned and asked, "Wait, did he just call me Vinchin, the seventh son of the Adenka house? What are these memories?" Davin's mind remained there, and he thought that although this dream was not entirely a nightmare, the air was so fresh, without the disgusting muskiness like in the underground prison. He threw his gaze out the window and realized his dream had a right arm. Was this a gift granted to him just before death? The man continued to furrow his brow, veins bulging in his eyes. He shouted into the boy's face, "How long do you intend to ignore me?" Davin easily sensed mana. The man was trying to use mana to make him feel pain. With experience and memories from a previous life, he quickly found a way to escape this control. The method to stop this kind of attack is simply to physically distance oneself from the opponent. And with that thought, Davin delivered a palm strike to the stomach and pushed him away. He was startled to realize the strike was not strong enough to push someone that far. The man could manipulate mana at that level, so why was he moving so slowly? In this new body, Davin involuntarily said, "I am sorry." He stood there confused and reached toward him saying, "I struck you by accident." But the man bluntly shrugged off his hand and replied, "To you insolent brat." He clutched his chest, stood up and continued, "Simply because you belong to the main branch." The man's face still radiated hostility. "My son will crush you without mercy. This will be the first time a branch overturns the main branch." Davin's mind realized that this man was just like his own father. He had always wanted to defeat his elder brother. Davin thought to himself that at the moment he realized he could not achieve that dream, he began to project it onto his son, and as a result he himself had become an unfilial child. The man left, but not without leaving a challenge. Finally the man departed, leaving Vinchin's body and Davin's mind alone in the room. After that a heavy sigh echoed. He quietly sat down on the chair, eyes closed in deep thought. Davin asked himself if this was not a dream. I should have woken up by now. Suddenly his mind wavered in pain. Now other memories were beginning to return. Images from the past began to appear, The mother had died after giving birth to Vincent. The father had not cared for him even a little. All the other children treated Vincent as an outlet for their anger. Among the 8 children of the prestigious sword-wielding Adanka family, Vincent was the 7th child, so cowardly that he would curl up and stay in his room crying after being tormented by the family's youngest child. An ugly duckling abandoned by the others in the main branch of the Adanka family, a target for the branch families who wanted to surpass the main line. Now Davin, the first hand of the Samian family, had become the useless Vincent of the Adanka family. He realized that this was called reincarnation. After all of the memories returned, everything blended and adapted very quickly. Davin slowly stood up but said to himself, I do not understand anything at all. He stepped forward and took a brown-covered book from there, a journal. Davin stood reading what he had once written in the past. Thousands of questions of why. Why can I not do the things my brothers and sisters can? All of them from the branch families are looking for chances to trample me. The maids and servants all ignore me. I have no strengths at all. I might as well die. Davin finished reading, then closed the journal and thought to himself the journal was filled with words of criticism he had directed at himself. It seemed Vincent's self-esteem had fallen to the lowest possible level and he had given up everything. Putting the journal back on the shelf, Davin thought to himself, it seems God has answered our prayers, kid. The old image of himself in the dark dungeon resurfaced up to the very last moments Davin had wanted to live and Vincent had always wanted to die. He wondered if things had really been that way. The one who wanted to die disappeared, and the one who wanted to live was reborn. Right at that moment a strange sound echoed in his head, a voice asking, do you really intend to believe such a ridiculous thing? Davin's eyes burned red as he looked behind him. He glanced around the room with a look of irritation. Someone was in the room and Davin said out loud, who are you? The voice rang out again. Are you naive or simply stupid? Vincent thought to himself, but the demon is trying to deceive me because my reincarnation should not have happened. The other answered, what are you thinking so deeply about? I am the original owner. Deep blue eyes appeared behind a pair of lenses together with a voice confirming the answer exactly. The boy continued, my name was originally Vincent, but because I gave this body to you, I no longer have a name, please call me Julian. Those words served as confirmation that from now on he would live this life and be called Vincent Adanka. Seeing Julian appear before him, he wondered, were you not dead? How could this happen? The boy smiled and replied with an enlightenment. Vincent continued to look confused. He thought enlightenment was the thing the gods grant to humans. He had heard that those blessed from birth sometimes could hear words of enlightenment. Vincent's eyes flickered in surprise. Could it be? He pointed at Julian and asked, are you saying you are a god? The boy calmly replied, that is right. Julian scratched his face awkwardly and continued, however, I am only a minor god. The boy explained that originally I intended to summon a spirit god, but you took its place. If I want to become a true god instead of a minor one, I will need to achieve countless accomplishments. Julian added, we call that calamities. If I complete my calamities, I will be able to become a true god. Vincent listened and replied, I understand your situation, but I have no interest at all in your accomplishments. He reaffirmed, if everything is exactly as you just said, then I have been reincarnated. I will be very busy living my own life, so I will not have free time to listen to any ghost's wishes. Julian smiled, that is right. I gave up my own life and you wished for it. As a result, this happened. The boy floated behind Vincent and continued, however, my spiritual power is extremely weak. If my spiritual power completely disappears, then that body will die. You do not mind that, do you? This made Vincent a bit confused. What? Are you threatening me? The boy stretched his arms and legs and asserted, this body is too strong. It cannot die early. Suddenly, Vincent's face darkened. Something unusual had happened. While Julian was still calmly there, Vincent was sweating in anxiety. His voice stammered, you bastard. As soon as he finished, Vincent's body collapsed heavily, face down to the ground. At this moment Vincent was lying inside the sea of consciousness, surrounded by small butterflies. Julian's voice echoed, from now on, I will show you my true memories." As soon as the words ended, the glowing butterflies suddenly transformed, leaving behind a magical trail as if vivid sorcery had just been awakened from a fantastical world. After that, they turned into bolts of lightning striking directly into Vincent's abdomen, causing him to open his mouth and scream loudly. Everything came at once, making Vincent somewhat pained. He clenched his teeth and his eyes glowed. In his heart he wondered, these memories. His eyes widened. By his ears were insults, trash, idiot, kick him a few more times. Along with those words were images of a Vincent being mercilessly bullied and beaten by children of the same age. When inside this body, at that moment, he was surprised and wondered. His expression, what is that? Vincent realized, so that is it. He was never in despair, while pretending to be cowardly. It turned out that every passing second, Julian had been building the foundation for revenge. Vincent widened his eyes to the ceiling, hand over his forehead. In his heart he wondered, are these really the thoughts of a 13-year-old child? What kind of world have I reincarnated into? Julian laughed coldly and asked him, how about it? My acting was too perfect, was it not? The boy added, I had to escape the family's supervision. The subjects I wanted to study were considered at the level of the apostles. Looking at Vincent sitting cross-armed on the chair, Julian asked again, now do you want to hear me speak? This will not bring you any disadvantage. He gently nodded in agreement. Julian's voice continued, all right. Then do you know the great demon Davin and the brave King Kajin? These words awakened his past life's thoughts. Vincent's eyes widened. His pupils turned red. He stood up abruptly, looked up and asked Julian, what? Vincent raised his voice, repeating the boy's words, the great demon Davin, the brave King Kajin. Outside the Samian swordsman family estate 500 years ago, heavy rain poured down and thunder roared. Julian's voice narrated, this is what happened 500 years ago. The one-armed swordsman Davin defeated many soldiers and escaped from the Samian prison. Because of his deal with the devil, he slaughtered thousands of lives to become stronger. It was rumored that he killed more than 1,000 people. That is why he was recorded in history under the name the Great Demon. After hearing this, Vincent frowned and wondered, the Great Demon Davin from 500 years ago. I have come to the future 500 years later. This makes no sense at all. He held his head, accepting the truth. But how many people named Davin and Kajin are there, also carrying the blood of the Samian family? Vincent repeated like a confirmation, I definitely died 500 years ago in prison, did I not? Remembering that day, the Samian family abandoned the one-armed man and chose the treasured sword. When the one-armed swordsman died in loneliness, the treasured sword became the Sword King. He gnashed his teeth in anger, but they distorted history and spoke of the great demon and the brave king like that. They really made up terrible things. Vincent slammed the table hard and cursed silently, those damned Samian families. Julian's voice continued to echo, and furthermore, the brave King Kajin was a very beloved friend of the great demon Davin. Is that not too romantic? He immediately flung away the pile of books and cursed, stop that crazy nonsense. The boy wondered, why are you angry? Vincent bluntly replied, because history has been completely distorted. Julian widened his eyes in astonishment and asked, are you someone from that era? He only responded with a hum. Julian immediately tried to soothe, oh, well, you must be really old then. Do not be mad, old man. After all, history is only the story of the victors. Vincent looked up and asked, how can a 13-year-old talk like that? The boy confidently replied, children nowadays grow up fast, not like in your time. Vincent exhaled in frustration, pulled out a chair and sat down, just kept talking. Julian's narration continued to echo. The brave king swallowed his tears and cooperated with the outstanding hero of that time, your close friend, the Sun Sword King, to defeat the great demon Davin. He crossed his arms and wondered, who is the Sun Sword King? I have never heard his name. The boy replied, you do not know who Arslan is. He was the ancestor of the Adanka family. When Vincent heard this, he jumped up. Arslan, that cheeky brat. He became the first head of the Adanka family. He recalled the image of that person, green hair and a naive face, who once introduced himself. "Greetings, Sir Davin." At that time, Davin was already a tall young man, while Arslan was just a boyish admirer, gripping his hand firmly and declaring, "When I grow up I want to be like you." Davin at that time smiled to himself. Even though Arslan was still young then, the boy was still his friend and student. What was so good about a one-armed man like him anyway? When he was imprisoned, Arslan visited a few times while he was locked up. The boy once stood there firmly and declared, "You have never committed any crime. Power will never defeat the truth." Arslan gripped the iron bars tightly and proclaimed, "I will surely guarantee that. I will surely restore your honor, no matter how long it takes." Returning to the present, Vincent sat in deep thought. After Arslan said that the boy never came again, Julian lightly kicked his feet and floated in front of him, continuing, "He was the first head of the Adenka family and left a lifelong mission for us. It is related to my achievement." This made him wonder, what is it? The boy's face suddenly brightened as he spoke of this. "It is to surpass the Samian family and fight for the truth." Vincent also froze, his eyes glowing red and his green hair standing out against the dark background, as if affirming the shared purpose of the two in the coming future. He closed his eyes, tilted his head back and thought, "Fight for the truth. Is that a coincidence?" Arslan definitely said the boy would reveal the truth, and he is the one who knows about my story. Vincent seemed satisfied. It was surely no coincidence, and even if I do not know everything, I know this clearly. Arslan Falker abandoned the Falker family and created the Adenka family to fight for the truth. Adenka was a newly created family to restore Davin's honor, Arslan's family. This must be fate, so that he was reborn in this family. Vincent asked Julian, "You are from the Adenka family, and my mission is to complete the tasks given. If I complete that mission, will you truly become a god?" The boy replied, "That's right. If that happens, you will truly become the master of my body. If I become a god, I can also bestow blessings on you as well." Julian smiled and asked, "This benefits both of us. How about it?" He stepped forward and gripped the sword of the Adenka family, silently thanking Arslan in his heart. Vincent drew the shining sword as the flow of mana spread across it, at the same time affirming, "I will inherit the mission you left behind. I will surpass the Samian family." He confidently affirmed, "I will climb over the family that betrayed me by becoming a part of this family." The scene shifted to the corridor outside the Adenka family mansion, sunlight shining on Vincent's footsteps. Julian floated beside him and asked curiously, "Old man, where are you going?" Vincent looked slightly annoyed and replied, "I told you to stop calling me an old man." The mischievous boy retorted, "Come on, if you are from 500 years ago, then you are definitely an old man." Vincent answered wearily, "What now? The mission? Maybe because I am old my memory has declined." Immediately Julian changed his attitude, quickly grabbed his hand and called his name. Vincent blinked and requested, "Just call me Vincent." Julian raised his hand to his forehead and obeyed, "Yes, Sir Vincent." Suddenly a voice from outside drew their attention, and the battle began. Vincent stood behind a pillar and looked out. Two swords clashed, producing a harsh sound. Soldiers equipped with armor, shields, and swords were training there. He wondered, "I wonder what kind of martial arts people of this era use. How much has martial arts advanced after 500 years? Vincent smirked with excitement. The Samian family, descendants of Kajin, how much stronger they have become. This will be fun. He held his head and realized, "But why does my body feel so heavy?" Then his head and whole body grew dizzy and unsteady. My body. Some time later, inside his room, Vincent was sitting and circulating energy, blaming inwardly, "This kid's body is really trash, fainting too easily. This body is so terrible that if I do not use mana to control it, I cannot live normally." He suddenly realized, "What is this mana flow? Could it be?" Vincent jumped up and shouted, "Julian, where are you?" The boy appeared in pajamas, yawning and asking, "Why are you suddenly looking for me?" Vincent immediately grabbed Julian and shouted, "You, why did you not learn swordsmanship?" The boy innocently explained, "Because I was sick so I could not learn." Vincent still questioned why. Julian calmly replied, I was born that way. After sensing his body, Vincent realized, you have holy bones. Why did you not learn swordsmanship? The boy pushed him away and said, let me go. What are holy bones? Why are you making such a fuss? Vincent explained, you can store mana everywhere in your body. More precisely, you can store mana in your bones. The strange words made Julian dumbfounded. Store mana in bones. Vincent rubbed his head in frustration. I am going crazy. How do I explain this? Listen carefully. A warrior needs to use mana to gain superhuman strength beyond ordinary people. He added that mana is usually stored in the heart. Vincent then looked at Julian and concluded, but having holy bones means that besides the heart, you can store it in the bones as well, which means you have an infinite source of mana. The boy answered indifferently, great. After telling Julian about the talent of his body, Vincent stood there in deep thought. How ironic, after being reborn in a new form, I now have bones similar to Kajin, someone I always hated in my previous life. He looked out the window and murmured, but the world 500 years later is an unfamiliar place compared to what I once knew. The image of Julian appeared. The boy indifferently explained, fine, listen to me. I cannot connect the symbol with the heart. Vincent sat on the bed, confused. Symbol. What is that? The boy hugged a pillow, covering his face in frustration. What is with that expression? Since when did I have to explain these things? Julian continued, the symbol is a kind of image that represents your mana. Hearing that, Vincent was startled and exclaimed, mana is stored in the heart, is it not? Then what about the meditation method? This time it was the boy's turn to look puzzled. But what meditation method are you talking about? Vincent recalled the knowledge from his previous life and answered, asking about meditation. Falker, the first person capable of storing a huge amount of mana in the heart. Julian immediately clarified, in the past we stored mana in the symbol and called that each star, and the number of stars represented the strength of each person. The boy looked down and added, it has been a long time since people used the body to store mana. I do not think there is anyone left. Hearing that, Vincent could only sigh, unbelievable. He placed his hand on the hilt of his sword, gazing at the starry sky through the window, and thought, so, that means each member of the family must at least possess one symbol. Connecting the symbol and sensing the mana is the first condition to achieve one star. Vincent slightly drew the sword in his hand and murmured, it seems that gathering mana in the symbol is to avoid the dangers that occur when mana is stored in the heart. He looked at the sword in front of him and reflected, in the past many people faced danger using that method, because once it explodes it would surely be terrifying. As the thought ended, mana appeared and burst forth. The sword glowed and a spot of mana gathered before Vincent's chest. Julian was startled and exclaimed, wait, stop. Are you gathering mana in your heart? Vincent calmly swung his sword and replied, do not worry, my heart is very strong. Vincent continued to slash horizontally with a smile and said, if you want to become stronger, then you must accept challenges. He told himself, even Devon the First once used this method to grow stronger. But Julian still looked extremely worried. Wait, why are you letting mana scatter everywhere like that? The command is wrong. Do you not know about the circuit formula? Vincent turned back and complained in confusion, so noisy, is there another formula? The boy made a surprised face and replied, of course, who would ever do it like that? Naturally, there is a proper formula to use mana. He quickly explained, I was only trying to recall how it was done before. Julian stepped closer with a sorrowful voice. Many people have failed. Vincent responded, magical energy will transform and erupt. Only within moments, Julian was left speechless, both of them picturing an image of a body exploding because of it. The boy asked in despair, so that meant death. In other words, Vincent replied, consider it as half a life left. Does that sound fine? Julian was so furious that he fumed and raised his voice. That body is not yours, so you treat it like that. Please show some respect, will you? Vincent immediately dropped himself onto the bed and replied, fine, what respect? Vincent looked up and asked, why are you doing this with this body? His sudden question left Julian startled and speechless. Vincent raised his hand to look at it and continued. The appearance of this body is not bad. The heart is also very strong. You just need to live peacefully as a member of Adinka, and you will succeed. The boy still listened wide-eyed. The symbol is an important thing to gather mana, but having it also requires mana, and because of the difficulty in the past 30 years, no one has ever seen it again. Vincent sighed. At this rate, the body of Vincent Adinka will die before reaching adulthood. The scene shifted to the evening. Most of the lights in the Adinka mansion had gone out. Only one room upstairs remained lit. Inside, Vincent was meditating, the objects in the room floating in midair, while he manipulated mana and thought to himself, meditation can help us avoid many things, but everything has its limits. Perhaps only 10 years remain. After a moment, sweat dotted his face, and he told himself, 10 years, that is enough. Enough time to become a sword king, and Davin the First will reappear. He recalled his image from the previous life to remind himself. It was also the time when Davin was imprisoned in the dungeon, slowly starved to death. Truly a pitiful life. Unconsciously, his clenched hand trembled slightly. Inside he felt uneasy. Those years were truly terrifying. I endured for so long. Suddenly a fist pounded heavily on the door. A loud voice calling, "What are you doing in there, young master? Answer me." Vincent was startled. He opened his eyes wide and wondered, "Who is that?" Someone opened the door and stepped in, wearing the clothes of a servant. He looked at the messy things on the ground and complained, "Oh my, what is going on here, young master? What mess have you made in the room?" Vincent slowly stood up and asked, "Are you my servant?" He frowned and replied with an equal tone, "Of course, who else would I be, young master?" Vincent searched through his memory and murmured, "Let me see, his name is Wilson. The one Julian will kill with his own hands 3 years from now." Immediately Vincent shook his head wearily. "No, do not think too much." Then he took off his shirt, threw it toward Wilson and ordered, "You came at the right time. Bring a clean set of clothes here for me, and clean the room." Hearing that, he froze and wondered, "What is this? Why does he look stronger than usual today? Is this still the weak Vincent I always knew?" Wilson asked, "Young master, what did you do to stir up the entire room? Could it be you just did some crazy experiment?" A big question mark appeared in Vincent's head, and he calmly replied, "No, I did not." He furrowed his brow and raised his voice, "No, you shut yourself in here reading until you go insane. What benefit is that? You must have been learning black magic. I will report this matter." Vincent slowly approached Wilson with 2 fists ready and told him, "It is rare to see a servant speak like that to his own master." Hearing this, Wilson exclaimed, "What?" Vincent looked at his servant and continued, "You continuously want to do things your master does not want. That means from the beginning you never intended to obey." His firm words left Wilson flustered and hesitant. Vincent grew serious and lowered his voice. "Indeed, I made you work more than usual, but do you not see that as your duty?" Wilson swung his hand in protest. "I already said I will not do what I do not want to do. What do you think I am here for?" Vincent replied with a question. "Exactly. You are just a servant, am I right?" Then Vincent snatched his clothes from the servant's hands and walked away. "Fine. If you do not want to do it, then do not. I will get my own clothes." Wilson nervously exclaimed, "Where are you going, young master?" Vincent turned back with a smile and replied, "I intend to go to Lord Chamberlain to look for clothes. I will say I had to go there because Wilson refused to do this task." These words made him anxious. Anger caused veins to bulge on his face. Right after that, Wilson reluctantly reached out and grabbed the clothes from Vincent's hands. "I will do it right away. Who said I would not?" He left in frustration while adding, "I will clean the room as well, so just leave it there." Watching the servant's back, Vincent told himself, the previous Vincent truly was a coward. Even a servant could be so arrogant. They surely acted like this with a purpose. Suddenly Julian appeared behind him and agreed, "Right, I think so too." Vincent continued, "They are just people ignorant of their position who like to provoke the limits of others. They must see what the 7th heir of the Adinka family is truly like." Julian hesitantly asked. Besides, Wilson is also one of those fanatics who slaughtered hundreds of people. What should we do? Vincent laughed loudly and answered, Murder. Listen carefully. A murderer always carries a different kind of energy with him. He added, But I do not feel that energy from him. He is just a worthless man. His eyes are still very naive. I also see him as nothing more than a coward. Hearing that, Julian smiled and asked slyly, Were you not also that kind of person once? Otherwise, how would you understand so well? Vincent's eyes flashed with a deadly red glow, and he answered the mocking question, Because I have already lived through one life. Hearing his words and witnessing his expression, Julian suddenly grew uneasy and told himself, What is wrong with him? Could it be I have summoned something even more terrifying than the Demon King? The scene shifts to the next day. The door of the room slowly opened along with the familiar voice of Wilson calling out, My lord. He stepped in with a frown on his face, holding Vincent's clothes in his hands, and continued, I have finished washing your clothes from yesterday. Do you like the way I cleaned your room? Sitting there casually, he replied, Thank you for working hard. Placing the clothes on the table, Wilson still kept his irritated tone. Please do not turn the room into a battlefield again next time. Understanding the matter, Vincent quickly soothed. Fine, I will not do that again. Hearing this, he smiled with satisfaction and thought to himself, It seems he is easier to handle now. What could useless Vincent do even if he acted proud? Vincent suddenly held out his hands to measure, and said to him, Wilson, bring me a wooden sword about 1 meter long like this. It would be best if it weighed about 500 grams, and it should be made of black wood. There must be plenty of those in the warehouse. Hearing this, he glanced with a smug look and asked back, What if I refuse? Vincent immediately stood up and walked away. If you do not do it, then I will go get it myself. What should I tell the gatekeeper when he asks why I have to go in person? He did not forget to add another threat. Oh right, Wilson, do you know that the guards at the warehouse are masters, and they are very loyal to the descendants of this family? Wilson panicked and quickly reached out to stop him. Wait, why are you acting like this again? He clung to Vincent's shoulder to pull him back. Geez, wait a moment. Suddenly, Wilson's eyes widened in shock. Vincent had grabbed his arm and executed a counter throw, sending Wilson's hips crashing hard onto the floor as he cried out in pain. After that, he released him and apologized. Sorry about that. I have quite a lot of bad memories of being hit from behind. Wilson grimaced in pain and replied with difficulty, I have never heard of such a thing happening before. Turning his back to him, Vincent continued, Then that is even better. From now on, carve that into your head. Outwardly confident, but his body was trembling in waves now, sweat pouring down as he thought to himself, Just throwing him down already makes my whole body ache. Damn, it hurts. Wilson had already stood up, exhaled heavily, fists ready with a thin layer of mana covering them. Sensing that, Vincent radiated a dense killing intent and asked in a low growl, What, do you want to say something? He immediately shifted into an awkward state, pressing his 2 index fingers together. No, sir. What did you say? 1 meter of blackwood, right? Seeing Wilson become obedient, he smiled and raised his voice. Did you not say you did not? After that, the door slammed shut with clear intent. Wilson hurriedly cracked it open to explain. The door slammed because of the wind. I did not do it on purpose. Vincent stood there and sighed in frustration. This little mouse. I did not even say anything. The scene then shifted to the hallway outside, with a sound of heavy, angry footsteps. Wilson carried the wooden sword in his hand with a sulky and irritated demeanor. He muttered to himself, I must not lose to him ever again. Not ever again. I will show him why I am Wilson. Entering Vincent's room, the look of challenge appeared on his face. Wilson held out the wooden sword and curtly said one word. Here, inwardly full of smug satisfaction. So what feels awful, does it not? You thought I would just hand it to you like this. Vincent closed the book he was reading, turned to him and said, Wilson, do you know, among all the people I know, there is one man without a right hand. While he was listening, Vincent pointed at his own right hand and continued, Because he had no right hand, his life was rather difficult. In fact, he encountered something very terrible at the end of his life. Instantly understanding the hidden meaning in every word, Wilson immediately bowed and respectfully presented the wooden sword with both hands. "Your wooden sword, sir." Vincent reached out to take it, not forgetting to say thank you. Furious inside, he thought, "Damn it, this is humiliating." Wilson uncomfortably said, "Now that I have finished the task you assigned me, I ask permission to leave." After that he left with anger in his heart, but unable to do anything more. Vincent stood there with the wooden sword in his hand and muttered to himself, "Good, now I just need some proper training." After a while, the sound of strikes between the wooden sword and the training dummy echoed. In the training yard of the mansion, Vincent kept panting while unleashing slashes at the dummy in front of him. He was using his left hand to do this, thinking to himself, "I know this holy bone is very weak, but I did not think I would be exhausted after only a few swings of the wooden sword like this. It seems I still have a long way to go." Vincent smiled in satisfaction. "However, this feeling is truly amazing. It seems I was born to become a martial artist." At that moment, the dummy was suddenly split in half before his astonished eyes. A voice rang out, "Sorry." The blonde kid stood there looking at Vincent and continued, "Since the mana flow was too weak, I did not think anyone was actually using the straw figure. Who are you?" He smirked and introduced himself. "I am Revan Adinka. Are you not the useless Vincent?" He looked at the boy in front of him. In front of the training dummy, Julian's voice rang in Vincent's head. "Revan Adinka is only a backup descendant." Recognizing the boy's voice, Julian continued, "He is also one of the candidates predicted to win the True Sword Conference this time. You have met his father before, right?" Hearing that, Vincent recalled the old man who was displeased with him when he had just regressed. So he is that man's son. Revan's footsteps stomped hard on the ground. Watching him approach, Julian reminded, "Be careful. He is a seed from the backup descendants. The one with the best skills among the 13-year-olds in the Adinka family." Revan stepped forward with a challenging attitude. "I guess if I win in the True Sword Conference this time, I will have to fight you." Vincent at this moment was slightly dazed. The words True Sword Conference echoed in his mind. He recalled that it was a sword tournament gathering children from martial families of the Adinka branch, and because there was no age limit, people usually participated in the True Sword Conference at age 14. The champion of the True Sword Conference was believed to have the opportunity to fight the official descendant of the Adinka family of the same age. The official descendant who would have to duel the conference champion would be Revan. Useless Vincent was considered the weakest among the official descendants. He stood there boldly challenging, "You will not escape me because you are too scared." "In this True Sword Conference things will not end with a wooden sword," Vincent replied. "How can a fighter be afraid of a sword?" Suddenly Revan laughed loudly. "I guess you have been talking big ever since you became an official descendant, huh?" Vincent crossed his arms in front of his chest and answered, "Your boasting is pretty good too." Not letting him speak further, Vincent retorted firmly, "Even provocations must have limits and rank," he thought. "How dare he mock a family member who is training? He is too rude." Davin One Arm had to respect both training and sparring. Even Kajin respected this. Vincent frowned and criticized, "Chopping someone else's straw scarecrow. You are a disgrace to all martial artists. You should be ashamed of yourself. I guess your father, who is also from the backup descendants, taught you to behave like that." Hearing these words, Revan flew into a rage. He placed the wooden sword on Vincent's shoulder and shouted, "You dog! How dare you insult my father? I decided I would never spare you from the moment you insulted my father." Julian immediately reminded Vincent he is at 2-star level and his attribute has reached steel level. "You must be careful because after all he is stronger than you now," Vincent replied. "I know I will lose if I fight him at this time." Vincent recalled the image of that old man and his son and continued, "It is obvious that he reeks of the lowliness of the one who raised him, because they are only backup descendants. He used mana even though he knew I could not control mana yet. His father does not even behave like an adult, and his son does not know the manners of a martial artist." He immediately gripped the wooden sword in his hand, It seems the thinking of martial artists is no longer what it was 500 years ago. I must make sure he learns this. Vincent pointed the tip of the sword straight at Ravon's face and said, "In my time, someone like you would be struck by the eldest member of the clan." He stood there smiling with satisfaction, thinking, "Fortunately, I still have a good sense of distance." Meanwhile, Ravon began to feel puzzled. What is this? He is pointing a sword at me. Not only does he not have mana, he cannot even perform techniques. How can he be so confident? He furrowed his brow, full of thought. I am sure that from the moment he pointed the sword at me, he had no chance of winning. Seeing Vincent's confident smile, Ravon grew somewhat worried. What is this atmosphere? Will he chop me at any moment? At that moment he spoke to dispel the tense air. All right, stop here. Vincent sheathed his sword and continued, "If you are frightened by a few wooden swords, then how can I feel comfortable fighting you in the true sword conference?" His eyes flashed red, and he left a reminder. In the true sword conference, things do not end with a few wooden swords. You know that, right? Ravon's eyes widened. His teeth clenched tightly in fury. Inside Vincent's mind, Julian nervously urged, "What are you doing? Dodge quickly." But Vincent remained calm, gently reassuring. "Don't worry, Julian. He cannot harm me." At that very moment a guard appeared, restraining Ravon and warning, "Young master, stop at once. You must not fight young Master Vincent here." Ravon roared, "What? Let me go." Julian finally sighed in relief. Thank heavens. Vincent smiled with satisfaction. "See, I told you." The guard continued to reason. "If you injure young Master Vincent here, he will have an excuse to avoid the match. You must face him at the True Sword Conference, so please restrain yourself." Ravon frowned, realizing the point, then glared and left his challenge. "Then saw you at the True Sword Conference, coward." The scene shifted to Vincent's room, where he sat reading a book, while Julian scolded beside him. "Honestly, why did you provoke Ravon just now? If his guard hadn't stopped him, you could have been in trouble." Vincent calmly replied, "All I did was teach that insolent brat a lesson." The boy groaned in frustration. "I'm going crazy. How did you even end up like this?" Julian fumed. "I had to make plans to summon the Spirit King, you know?" Vincent answered, "Sorry, that's why I'm learning about what's happening in this era from you." After flipping through the pages for a while, he spotted an image. It was a portrait. Julian slammed the book with his hand and shouted, "Hey, focus. Don't get distracted by trivial things. Have you finished learning the theory of illusions yet? Focus on magic and the 5 elemental attributes." Vincent startled, asking back, "Attributes?" The boy began explaining, "Attributes are what humans use to create power from blessings. A self-created blessing." Vincent was shocked. "What? You can create your own blessing? That's disrespecting the gods. You'll be punished." Julian turned his face away and answered, "What are you talking about? You don't respect the gods either. You should be grateful no one has died from divine punishment yet." He asked tentatively, "Ravon also has an attribute, right? So what is the blessing Iron Man?" Julian quickly explained the blessing of the Dwarf King includes many things. These attributes will help the recipient gain more power. The more special blessings there are, the more chances there will be to open a stronger path. It is like branches. Iron Man is a mid-level blessing. Its power is defense and attack. After hearing this, Vincent showed excitement. It seemed this was quite a new and interesting thing. The boy continued, "You will become much stronger." He immediately thought about the straw figure being cut in half, just as Julian said that straw figure. Ravon had shown me incredible achievements compared to the people of my time. The power of the attribute Vincent fell into contemplation to fight someone like that. I need to get used to those skills. The scene shifts the next morning, still at the family training yard. Vincent, with a face full of determination, and continues to deliver reverse slashes. The servants, seeing this, gossiped again. "The young master, is he swinging the sword with his left hand? Then he will soon get bored. Everyone knows that he already started swinging the sword randomly after 2 or 3 strikes. It really looks funny." Suddenly someone stepped in, cutting them off. "Do not speak harshly of him like that." The servants exclaimed, "Deputy Commander Merlin." This young man belonged to the White Sword unit. He looked at them and continued, what is so funny when the young master of the Adanka family is practicing martial arts? The servants quickly left, replying anxiously, "We are sorry, Sir Merlin," then looked out at the training yard side and thought, that is what I wanted to say. Witnessing Vincent leaning on the sword and panting heavily made him a little sad. Look at him, everyone always calls him the shame of Adanka, a person swinging his sword. Unconsciously, without any attribute or mana, he is always despised by others. Julian glanced around and reminded them, "They are gossiping about you. Should we not practice in the forest?" Then he immediately asked back, "Do you have the strength and time to go there?" Vincent recalled his past life and the harsh words of the family and lamented, "I am used to being despised since no one expected that I had defeated the sword dance." He felt a little proud, "But I did it. I once turned defeat into victory with this body. I need to try harder." A hand appeared in front of Vincent together with a bottle of blue liquid. The person said to him, "Spiritual recovery potion." Here Merlin placed his hand on his chest and continued, "It will be easier for you to practice with it, sir." He looked up and asked, "Who are you?" He immediately introduced me as the deputy commander of the White Sword unit, Merlin. Vincent looked over and asked, "Are you mocking me?" Merlin hesitated. "To be honest, I did." He looked closely at the young master once more and continued, "But your eyes seem to crave something. Anyone who mocks such a warrior should be considered despicable." Vincent looked at the red-haired young man in front of him and affirmed, "Merlin. I will remember this name." He looked at him and added, "Forgive me, you were supposed to be on patrol at this time. You may go now." Merlin still showed respect and replied, "Then I shall take my leave." Although he left, he still turned his head back and thought. After a period of exertion, Vincent tiredly sat down and drank the recovery water. That evening, when he returned to his room, he continued studying and learning with the dedicated guidance of Julian. The scene shifted to another moment, a powerful stomp. Together with Vincent's thoughts, his right foot balanced firmly. He told himself, and with the added rotation of his hips, "I can feel the mana in my chest." Vincent's eyes widened and he realized, "I am beginning to sense it now, the path to defeating Kajin." The image of confronting his cousin in his previous life appeared again in his mind. Back at the training ground, the target was the dummy before him. Vincent told himself, the sword path must follow the exact starlight points to fully unleash its power. His eyes lit up, along with his strong determination as he delivered the slash, "Right now." Finally, the dummy was split into two parts by Vincent's sword. He smiled in satisfaction after so much effort. "I have succeeded." Vincent looked at the wooden sword and thought to himself, "I have mastered swordsmanship." Meanwhile, Wilson was carrying a plate of food, his attitude irritated, muttering complaints. "Damn it, how many days has it been? He is not a rooster, so why eat at 5 in the morning? His training only makes me work." Then a thought flashed in his mind. Maybe I should humiliate him a bit. Afterwards, entering Vincent's room, under the young master's expectant gaze, Wilson slowly lifted the lid and said, "Young master, breakfast has arrived." He froze when he saw what was before him. The plate of food had been tampered with. The messiness and the missing portion could be easily noticed by the naked eye. Seeing the food still stuck on Wilson's face, Vincent bluntly said, "If you want to steal food, then at least don't make it so obvious." He whistled in denial. "What are you talking about, sir?" He immediately exposed him. "If you had a conscience, you would at least wipe your mouth." At that moment Wilson hurriedly raised his hand to cover his mouth. Vincent lowered his voice and continued, "Right now I can easily overlook this." His eyes burned red, his brows furrowed as he reminded sternly, "I hope you..." Vincent held the plate in his hand and laughed scornfully. "Oh, I am so scared. You think you are above me." Wilson stepped forward and said, "Well then." Not letting him finish the sentence, Vincent immediately transmitted his voice into Wilson's mind. "Controlling others by threats is easy, but you cannot threaten me. That is why I do not drown you with force," he cried out in fear. "Telepathy. Young master has mana. Since when?" Vincent smiled and continued asking him, "The important thing is that I am using mana, right?" Wilson stood dumbfounded and replied, "Yes, sir." Vincent concluded with a warning. "Stop putting on a show in front of me and stand by my side. Soon you will no longer be humiliated for serving Vincent Adenka." Vincent winked and gave the demand, "At the right time you must decide between resisting or serving me with loyalty." Wilson stepped outside the door and at the same time called back into the room. "What are you saying? Even if you oppress me like this, I will never obey." Then he closed the door, stood there for a while speechless, with a deeply worried expression. Wilson was both astonished and afraid, exclaiming, "Why did he suddenly become so cool?" Back at the family training ground, Merlin walked and looked toward the row of dummies. He observed and thought silently, "It seems young Master Vincent came early today." Suddenly, Merlin froze, his eyes wide as he witnessed what was before him. He exclaimed in surprise, "What? This dummy, cut in half with a sharp sword strike." Merlin thought, "Impossible. From what I know, young Master Vincent only used a wooden sword." He placed his hand on the cut to feel it, but to say it clearly, from this angle, it was too precise. Could such progress truly be possible? Merlin stood dazed, his heart full of questions. "Young Master Vincent, what kind of swordsmanship are you learning?" Meanwhile here, he was enjoying a delicious breakfast, with Julian's delight behind him. The scene shifted to another morning. Vincent was standing there putting on a white shirt. While he calmly buttoned it, Wilson was sitting there carefully folding each piece of the young master's clothes. Julian amusedly said to Vincent, "Hasn't that bastard Wilson become extremely obedient?" Vincent smirked with satisfaction and replied, "He is just a bit stubborn. Leave him be and he will fall in line." Vincent looked at his collar and then spoke, "Wilson, about my clothes. They are made from levadine fabric." He immediately wondered, "What kind of fabric is that?" Vincent began explaining to Wilson. "Using this type is very cost efficient, but in return it gets dirty easily. This kind is not good enough for a noble like me to wear." Then Vincent looked at the plate of food he had just finished and continued, "And about the food, compared to my family's budget, those dishes are of very poor quality." Hearing this, Julian also looked confused. "What do you mean by that?" Vincent directly confirmed, someone had stolen money, surely they had embezzled it. The boy asked in surprise, "What do you mean? Could it be Wilson?" Meanwhile, he sat dumbfounded, repeating those words with a puzzled expression. "Levadine, embezzled." Vincent tiredly brushed it off, forgot it. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "It is not Wilson. He would not dare. It must be someone above him." The scene shifted to another place. The wooden sword was being struck downward with considerable force. Rebirth, whose body was quite well built for his age, was standing there panting heavily from exhaustion after finishing his training. He recalled the burning red eyes of Vincent when pointing the sword at him, and that voice echoed again, "Why are you so afraid?" This made Rebirth so angry that he clenched his teeth, veins bulging across his face. Just then, a voice called from outside the door, "Is Rebirth there?" A man entered, standing behind Rebirth, and said, "It looks like you are training very hard." The boy slightly turned his head and called, "Father?" He was Charles Adenka, father of Rebirth Adenka. Charles continued with a firm gaze, "Rebirth, you do not have much time left until the sword festival." He was reminded, "If we want to escape from the life of poverty and misery of our branch family, then you must defeat Vincent." Rebirth replied, "I know, father." Charles gripped his son's arm tightly, squeezing hard, his voice lowering harshly. It was mandatory. He frowned and growled, "You are required to become one of the branch family members capable of overthrowing the main branch. Do you understand?" The boy replied, "Yes, sir." Rebirth thought the conference was approaching, so father seems more irritable than usual. Day after day, his obsession grows worse. He told himself as he remembered Vincent, "I only need to defeat that bastard. Then my father and our family will be able." Over here, Julian grinned with the book in his hand and said, "So now, it is finally finished, the information about the participants in the sword conference." Vincent flipped through the pages and asked, "What the hell is this?" Not only their personal information, but also the techniques they usually use, and their habits too. Julian smugly said, "How about that? Epic, right?" He looked up at the boy behind him and exclaimed, "You are terrifying." Julian shivered a little and replied, "That gave me goosebumps. I will take it as a compliment." Vincent continued, "Your plan is to create a grand debut at the Sword Conference by borrowing the power of the Spirit King, right?" Julian answered, "Yes, and the Divine Stone." The boy pointed to the picture of the multicolored stone in the book and explained, "This is the mana gem that will be awarded to the champion. If you absorb that gem, your body and mana will both become stronger immediately, miraculous just like its name." He glanced at Julian and inferred, from the information he gathered and his expression, "I can clearly see how much the kid wants me to win." Vincent closed his eyes and smiled. "It would be humiliating for a fighter if I still lose while having all the information I need." He slammed the table and stood up. "Even if it is not the Spirit King's power as you said." Vincent exuded a strong aura and affirmed, "But I will win at this grand tournament so I can obtain the things I need." The bell rang, along with a loud call for Wilson. He ran in panting and replied, "Yes, young master, what is it?" Vincent stood there with the bell in his hand, smiled and said, "There is something I need you to do for me, Wilson." Immediately after, a slender woman's hand was placed on the pile of papers. The woman held a brush in her hand, her stern eyes behind her glasses looking out as she listened to the voice calling from outside, "I am Wilson. May I come in?" He cautiously opened the door just enough for his body to slip through, and his first words were a greeting. "How have you been, High Priestess Raelsa?" She was writing something, her face unchanged as she looked at Wilson. Then she glared and asked curtly in a harsh tone, "What is it?" Just one glance made him tremble all over, thinking to himself, "Truly a level 7 warrior, she is terrifying." Then Wilson's voice wavered slightly as he said, "Young Master Vincent has something he wishes to say and deliver to the family head." Raelsa showed indifference and disdain. "Is that so? It seems he does not even dare to come see the family head himself." While she continued writing, Wilson went on. He wanted the family head to attend the sword conference. He continued, "He said he will prove his own worth as a member of the Adinka main branch." Raelsa replied, "The family head never attends the sword conference. He neither has the time nor the reason to." A threat came out of Wilson's mouth, startling her. "This is the price for embezzling the budget." He stood there and continued, "Your task is to make what is impossible become possible." Raelsa raised her eyebrows and asked again, "What did you just say?" Wilson stammered nervously, "No, I only repeated what the young master told me to say." Hearing this, she immediately ordered, "Enough, leave this place." He had been waiting for that. His figure quickly vanished through the door, leaving behind only a faint yes in the room. Raelsa now sat there in thought. He could have come here himself. No, even if he had, he could not intimidate me any further. He deliberately sent Wilson here to show me that he holds the authority. She unconsciously smiled. At last he has become much smarter. The scene shifted to another room. A silver-haired man was sitting there with dense mana surrounding his seat. The muscles on his body bulged strongly. This man suddenly lowered his voice and called out the name, Raelsa. She stood there and spoke. "Master, young Master Vincent wishes to invite you to attend the sword conference." He immediately demanded, "It seems you have concerned yourself too much, Raelsa. Stop doing these meaningless things," and without letting him finish, she interrupted. "He said that he will prove his worth as a member of the Adinka main branch." The family head's face darkened, his brows furrowed as he questioned, "Proving his worth?" He asked the housekeeper, "Raelsa, do you think Vincent has the qualifications to speak of his worth within the clan?" She placed her hand on her chest, bowed her head respectfully, and answered, "Of course not. That is also why he promised that this time he will prove his worth." Raelsa added, "Please attend, Master. I will serve as your notary." He asked again, "Do you know what that means?" She knelt on one knee and replied, "Yes, if young Master Vincent cannot prove himself, I will sacrifice my life." The family head, upon hearing this, was puzzled. "I do not understand why you must go this far," Raelsa explained. "It is because young Master Vincent has struck at my weakness." His voice lowered as if he already knew everything. It is because you embezzled the budget, isn't it? Hearing this left her stunned. Raelsa then lifted her face and listened intently as the family head continued. Surely you deliberately did this for Vincent's benefit. You intended to use that money for his future. She immediately confessed, "It was my fault." He rested his hand on his thigh and continued, "I have no reason to interfere. That is your affair. I do not wish to involve myself further." The eyes of family head Khan narrowed as he thought to himself, no matter what method that boy uses, with the intention of declaring his purpose to me without losing even a shred of his dignity. He also silently affirmed, could that boy truly be the son of Sarvana? The scene shifts to the day of the sword conference. Above the grandstand the noise of the audience echoed, while down in the arena the participants stepped out from the tunnel. Standing out among them was Ravon in his red attire. He had prepared meticulously for this day, his eyes filled with determination. In his mind Ravon thought, "Get ready, Vincent, today I will surely defeat you." Suddenly, he noticed a figure above among the judges' seats. The faint image of family head Khan appeared there, along with the question in Ravon's mind, who that man is. After a brief hesitation, the image of Khan appeared in full authority, sitting cross-armed on his chair with 2 guards by his side, followed by a loud exclamation, "Impossible, family head Khan." Ravon smiled inwardly with delight. Surely he came to watch me, the rising star among the substitute heirs, to see how I fight. This is my chance. I will defeat you in the coolest way in front of the family head. Alongside the banner of the Adanka family, the announcement rang out, "The sword conference is hereby declared open." As the words ended, Ravon raised his blade high, laughed loudly and shouted, "So annoying, just die already." He directly lunged forward at his opponent, forcing the man to struggle to lift his sword and block. Reaching this day, none of the opponents were easy to deal with. The man immediately leapt up and swung his sword in counterattack. "How dare you be so arrogant?" But as his sword touched Ravon, it instantly shattered, broken by the shoulder armor's deflection. Ravon smirked triumphantly. "Did you even do anything?" He pointed his weapon at his opponent, brimming with pride. "You think that move would work against my steel attribute?" As soon as he finished, the sturdy-looking shield was pierced and shattered by his strike, sending his opponent flying backward. In the stands, before everyone's eyes, Charles jumped up in excitement. "That's it. That's the way, Ravon." A chorus of chatter erupted. No wonder he is called the rising star among the substitute heirs, so young yet already reaching the 2-star level. That defensive attribute is too impressive. Could it be that a substitute heir might truly win this tournament for the first time in history? Vincent, leaning against a wall, silently assessed. By the standards of 500 years ago, they would all be considered geniuses, exceedingly brilliant geniuses. He furrowed his brows in deep focus and realized, yet they seemed to have almost no profound understanding of swordsmanship. Their strength came mainly from their own attributes, and from their movements Vincent could not see any true combat experience, as if they were not. After defeating his opponent, he placed his hand on his chest, bowed toward the clan representatives' seats to show respect. Ravon's gaze shifted slightly to the side, a smirk forming with satisfaction. "I acknowledge you for not running away, Vincent." On the opposite side, Vincent answered with a defiant look of his own, thinking, "Climb up quickly, I will be waiting for you." Meanwhile, the family head Khan still sat motionless, face expressionless, saying nothing. The elimination matches continued afterward, with the crowd cheering passionately. One opponent after another was quickly defeated. Then the announcement rang out, "Stop! The battle has ended. The victor, Ravon Adanka." He stood there content, murmuring, "It is over." Ravon turned his face toward the family head, raising his voice as if to declare himself, "I am Ravon Adanka. I have defeated all my opponents." He smiled confidently and continued, "Now, according to the laws that have been set by the demand of all the elders, I will fight against my dear friend Vincent Adanka in the final battle of the sword conference." Vincent stood there smiling in satisfaction, listening to the last of Ravon's words, "I will fight against the direct heir of our clan." Then Vincent answered with a mysterious smile, "I accept his challenge." Immediately after, the two stood facing each other. The referee stood in the middle and raised a red flag. He introduced himself. I am Ziron, referee of this sword conference. Both of you, prepare. Vincent quickly raised his hand to interrupt. Wait, I have a condition. Then he called his servant Wilson, who responded respectfully and brought over a wooden sword. Vincent then picked it up, smiling with full confidence as he declared before everyone, I will only use this wooden sword, and I will fight with my left hand against my distant relative. I will also grant him 3 moves. Charles, upon hearing this, was deeply puzzled. What is he talking about? While the two people in front began whispering, I have heard some negative rumors about him. Has he gone mad? I do not know. Still not stopping, Vincent added, until the first 3 attacks are completed. I will not take a single step away from where I am currently standing. Feeling humiliated, Ravon roared in anger. What the hell are you doing, Vincent? How long do you plan on mocking me? The audience could not stop talking. This is ridiculous. Is it not true that young Master Vincent does not know any martial arts at all? So even if he is a direct heir, what of it? How can he be so arrogant? Charles stood up loudly. Young Master Vincent is only doing this to make excuses when he loses. Family head. Before he could finish his sentence, Family head Khan interrupted with a firm voice. I permit it. Charles quickly obeyed and fell silent. Khan reminded Vincent with a serious tone. Vincent, you had better prove your words with your actions. Vincent swung the wooden sword and replied, I will do so. Family head. Ziron stood in the middle and declared, if that is the case, the battle with the direct heir will begin. Both sides prepared. As soon as the referee finished speaking, Ravan provoked Vincent. Vincent responded with a serious gaze. Did you not hear what I said? I told you I would give you the first 3 attacks. Ziron raised the red flag high and announced, begin. That was all Ravan had been waiting for. He rushed forward with a sly grin. If that is the case, then die standing there. Vincent's eyes focused intensely, whispering in his mind, the first attack. Returning briefly to the past, back then he was researching information about Ravan and had told Julian, there is a high possibility it will be a short thrust. Back to the present, Ravan's voice rang out, let us see how long you can stay arrogant. And indeed he used a short thrust, which Vincent easily dodged by tilting his head aside. Meanwhile, he was still looking satisfied after the first strike and thought to himself, I caught him. Ravan's foot twisted slightly. Most of them were just feints. The real attack would be the second strike. He shouted with full confidence, now I have you cornered, Vincent. Vincent stood there observing and easily realized. His movements were far too obvious. Even without Julian's information, I could still see it. Since Ravan's attribute allows him to ignore damage, he does not even pay attention to the most basic things. Vincent frowned, raised his empty hand in front of him, hesitating as he said, from the very beginning, good swords. He swung his hand once, easily deflecting and knocking Ravan's weapon aside as he continued, not meant for stabbing. This startled Ravan, panic rising inside. He deflected my sword. Impossible. To be able to see exactly where my blade was going. He must be many levels stronger than me. Vincent began preparing for the combat stance while reminding Ravan, I have already allowed you 2 strikes. Enraged, Ravan gritted his teeth, glaring as he cursed, bastard. He slashed his weapon horizontally, infused with a massive surge of mana, his eyes flashing as he shouted, do not act superior just because you learned some petty tricks. But unexpectedly, Vincent had already gripped Ravan's wrist tightly without him realizing it. He slid his foot lightly, easily sweeping Ravan's supporting leg. The sword in Ravan's hand dropped immediately as Vincent grabbed his chest and slammed him hard onto the ground. Ravan screamed in pain, his eyes rolling white as blood spurted from his mouth, echoing across the arena. Vincent stood there looking down with eyes glowing with deadly light, his voice deep and commanding. That was the 3rd strike. Ravan lay there staring up in terror, only able to stammer, you, how? Vincent tightened his grip on the wooden sword, whispering to himself, Julian, I will keep my promise to you, and also the promise to my father. He infused mana into the weapon, looked down at Ravon and declared, "Now it is my turn to attack." The fact that a boy considered the best among the Branch family children was so easily defeated by the useless Vincent left everyone utterly shocked. Referee Zeron froze, his face stiff and blank as he witnessed this. Clan head Khan frowned slightly, wanting to say something but unable to put it into words. Ravon's father, Charles, widened his eyes in disbelief, his mouth agape as if he could not believe what he was seeing. In the middle of the crowd, he shouted down at his son, "What are you doing, Ravon? Get up!" His voice continued echoing with reproach. "How could you struggle against someone who doesn't even know how to use mana?" Ravon stood there questioning himself. What was going on? Even the spirit Julian turned to ask, "What just happened to Vincent?" "I could not see clearly," Vincent calmly replied. "That was basic hand-to-hand combat." Vincent smiled as he remembered his past life. Standing still without attacking is also an effective way of defense. That way you can observe your opponent. There are many ways to suppress an enemy without even using a weapon. At that moment Ravon looked up angrily, his voice faltering. "Now I understand." He laughed loudly as if mocking. "Gaining an advantage in such a short time must surely be thanks to that little spirit helping you. Don't you feel ashamed?" Julian grew slightly irritated. "Little spirit, he has gone too far," Vincent answered with a stern face. "If that makes you feel better, then keep thinking that way. But your thoughts will end right here." Ravon charged again with mana, shouting, "Shut up. Your cheap tricks will end here as well." Julian warned anxiously, "It's dangerous to block this strike. Dodge to the left." Vincent calmly replied, "I know." Right after that, Vincent quickly leapt to the right, dodging a powerful slash. He immediately raised his hand, a faint purple mana swirling into a spiral, his eyes flashing with a killing intent. Vincent looked at Ravon's angry expression and muttered to himself, "Damn it, my chance has come." Then he instantly unleashed a slash that grazed across his neck. Ravon quickly placed his hand on his throat, muttering in confusion, "What? Why doesn't it hurt at all?" Charles shouted from above to remind him, of course, a practiced sword can never break through a steel-like defense. Vincent thought to himself, with a body that has not been trained much, I cannot use any powerful skills yet, but if he is confident enough he will attack with that move once again. Meanwhile, Ravon kept leaping forward, laughing loudly as he swung the weapon in his hand. "Let me show you that the gap between us cannot be bridged by your meager talent." Vincent pulled his hand back, the sword in his grip glowing, silently reminding himself, use the power from his own attack. As Ravon raised both hands high, a wide opening appeared on his chest. Vincent thrust directly toward him. This strike sent Ravon flying backward before he could even complete his slash. Vincent spoke in a low voice, "Referee Zeron, you had better find a way to prevent a disaster from happening." This startled Zeron slightly, his eyes showing a trace of concern. Then Vincent stomped hard on the ground to gain momentum, thinking to himself, "I only have one chance." He dashed forward swiftly, reminding himself, "If I use this skill one more time my body will shatter." Vincent fixed his eyes on Ravon, who was still airborne, gathering a certain amount of mana into his hand, and thought with firm resolve, I must finish it while he is still suspended after that move. At that moment Ravon clenched his teeth in pain from the blow, glaring fiercely at Vincent rushing toward him. He tried to use the last of his strength, swinging his greatsword while cursing, "Bastard." Ravon focused intensely, his eyes glowing red as he muttered to himself, "I can see it." In his mind, the two of them were inside darkness, with red and blue connecting points, the starlight left behind by Ravon and the starlight created by himself, the path of the swords binding the two together. Vincent tensed, mana surging and roaring. "Watch closely, Julian. This is the technique I have trained." The red and blue points of starlight are fully connected. It empowered the wooden sword in his hand, now brimming with force, stabbing straight ahead as blood sprayed endlessly. Vincent halted, still gripping the sword in a raised stance, his eyes flashing with a crimson spark. As for Ravon, the arm holding his sword was severed and hurled into the air. Once again Charles was stunned, unable to believe in his son's defeat. Clan head Khan also froze, paying more attention to his son who had always been considered useless. The mana in Vincent's hand gradually faded, and he thought to himself, quickly take advantage of the opponent's imbalance, unleash the ultimate move. Raising his arm to cover half of his face, Vincent reminded himself, and used it to control everything, including the opponent's movements. This is called swordsmanship. Ravon stood there screaming in agony as blood sprayed endlessly around him. He clutched the remainder of his arm and shouted, "My arm?" while the referee stood there with his mouth agape, exclaiming, "Impossible." Vincent turned and said to Zeron, the referee, "What are you doing? Do I have to cut off his leg as well before I am crowned the victor?" At that, he hurriedly waved the flag and declared, "The champion is Vincent Adanka." Charles rushed down to the arena calling loudly for his son, Ravon, while guards rushed in shouting, "Stop the bleeding quickly." A healer with a recovery potion responded, "Medicine alone will not work. Summon the physician. Bring the physician here." Vincent stood there and said to the referee, "I told you to find a way to prevent this already, Zeron." He quickly bowed his head and replied, "Forgive me, it was my fault." Julian asked curiously, "Why are you so calm?" "Your body has already reached its limit. You must rest soon." But Vincent forced himself to stand there and replied, "I know, but it is not yet the time to rest." He then cast his gaze toward the clan head and said, "I have kept my promise, father." Khan's face remained indifferent, his arms folded across his chest, saying nothing. His eyes still stared down at the arena, along with Vincent's thoughts. "I told you I would prove my true strength directly to the Adanka family." Only at that moment did clan head Khan finally speak in a deep voice, "I understand." He then stood up, waved his hand, and declared, "The champion of the true sword tournament is Vincent Adanka." The clan head turned and walked away, saying, "Everyone, come inside. The award ceremony will begin." The scene shifted to that evening, the moon high in the sky. Inside the mansion, everyone gathered around the council table. A luxurious box was placed there, and its lid opened. Inside lay a multicolored divine stone. Vincent knelt there as clan head Khan picked up the stone and looked toward him. "The one who has won the victory shall receive this divine stone." He then directly held out the glittering stone toward him. At that very moment, the council room doors burst open along with the angry shout of Charles, "This is unacceptable." He roared in fury. There must have been some trick. All of Charles's accusations were aimed at Vincent standing there. He must have borrowed the power of some spirit, clan head. A physician in a white robe stepped forward from behind Charles, clan head. "A small issue has arisen." Khan turned immediately and asked with urgency, "What issue, physician?" The image of Ravon, heavily bandaged, was shown, with many healers desperately trying to reattach it. Charles heard and immediately turned to ask, "What are you saying? Will Ravon only ever have one arm?" The healer bowed his head and replied, "I sincerely apologize." He grabbed the collar of the man and shouted, "You are supposed to be a priest. How is it possible that something as simple as healing an arm could not be done?" He replied, "This is a type of injury we have never seen before." Julian anxiously called Vincent, while he stood there not knowing what to say. Ravon was lying there, with his severed arm beside him. The wound was strange and hard to comprehend. It seemed it had been cut by something that my divine power could not control. The healer continued, "If we do not act quickly, even a higher-ranking priest will not be able to heal it." Charles angrily shouted, "Look at this, family head. Just a wound like this, and even a level 3 priest cannot heal it. He must have learned many dark techniques. Surely there is some power assisting him." People behind the family head whispered among themselves, "Now that you mention it, he is right. It was sudden. How could the techniques of the young master be like this?" While everyone was still worried, Vincent placed his hand on his chest and asked, "Is it all right if I respond to him?" Khan immediately approved, "Go ahead." Julian panicked, calling out, "What are you doing?" He stepped forward and said, "The grand tournament of swordsmanship has taken place in the presence of the family head." Therefore, any actions must be approved by the authority of the family head, and the family head has declared that I am the final winner. Vincent confidently stated. Therefore, all of his words have been flatly rejected by the authority of the family head, and this is also a place where many special guests are gathered. He spoke gravely, questioning the face of the displeased man, Charles Adenka. Do you believe that your understanding surpasses that of the family head? Vincent turned to the referee from earlier, Ziron, and ordered Ziron, arrest him. Ziron hesitated, asking, Are you talking about it? Vincent replied firmly, The father of my friend Rivan, Charles Adenka. He heard this, clenching his fists, asking again, What, even though you are a descendant of the main line, how dare you? Vincent slightly glanced and responded, You asked about the authority of the family head here, right? Do you need me to explain further? Ziron was slightly worried, but had no choice but to obey. I will follow your orders. Immediately after, he tied Charles up and forced him to kneel. Charles shouted, What are you doing? Let me go. At that moment, the voice of family head Khan rang out calling his name, silencing him, Charles Adenka. Khan looked down and asked, Do you realize that you are indebted to Vincent? He added, The law of Adenka does not forgive. Family head Khan continued, Since we are both fathers, I will forgive you this time, so do not complain again. Charles immediately understood the situation and obeyed. Yes, family head. He then turned to praise. You did well, Vincent. Vincent placed his hand on his chest and replied, Thank you, father. Julian appeared extremely surprised. The boy scratched his head and smiled. It's nothing. I'm so embarrassed, Vincent replied. You look happy though. Julian was still very delighted. Truly a precious experience to be praised by the family head. Suddenly, Rivan groaned in pain, and as a father, Charles anxiously turned and shouted his son's name, Rivan. The healer approached, using magic in his hands to try to treat him, murmuring, At this moment, his right arm will be lost forever. Hearing this made him unwilling to accept it. Julian quickly turned to call Vincent, then whispered something in his ear. Vincent, after listening, immediately asked, Is this okay? The boy affirmed, This will definitely be an advantageous opportunity for us. After agreeing, he decided, All right, I will do as you say. Then Vincent stepped forward and asked, Priest, that right arm, can the divine stone help heal it? This made him hesitate, thinking to himself, The reward to be used to heal young Master Rivan is a divine stone. He is asking me to use that stone. Vincent smiled and calmly said, I will assume it can. Standing between his father and the healer, Vincent continued, I am the one who cut off Rivan's right arm. Is it all right if I handle this situation? Family head Khan had no reason to refuse. He immediately responded, Very well, I will let you take care of it. He stepped forward in front of Charles, his voice deep. Rivan Adenka mocked and ridiculed me in the arena. Hearing this, Charles immediately softened. I am sorry. I did not know how to teach him. I sincerely apologize. Please forgive him. Vincent responded firmly. Everything should be proven by action. He drew the guard's sword, causing him to exclaim in surprise, My sword. But then Vincent used it to unexpectedly cut the ropes binding Charles. He continued speaking to him, showing the remorse of a family head. Then I will use the divine stone to heal Rivan. Charles knelt there and asked, What do you want? Vincent radiated eerie mana, his voice cold, eye to eye and tooth to tooth, and the right arm. Hearing this, he could only frown and stand frozen. Vincent's gaze turned toward Rivan, silently scolding, What a useless brat. He stood there, watching the young man in pain turn his face away, full of thoughts. I know he has fully regained consciousness. He refuses to speak regardless of what is happening. Is the right arm that is important to you? Where has the filial piety of this generation gone? Charles held the sword, then placed his hand on the table and shouted, All right, I will sacrifice my right arm. He trembled slightly, but the sword was raised high and ready to strike. Julian observed and commented, It seems he really loves his son. Vincent agreed. Yes, it looks strange, but it is still paternal love. Meanwhile, Charles frowned, thinking to himself, I have to do this for Rivan. I must cut off my right arm. As soon as the thought ended, he shouted loudly to gather his courage for the sacrifice of his right arm. Vincent's eyes flashed, and he spoke in a deep voice. I told you to prevent any risks already, Zeron. As soon as Vincent finished speaking, from behind, he swung his sword and broke the sword in Charles' hand. He froze, sweat pouring down his face, breathing heavily. While Zeron exhaled in relief, Vincent stepped forward and said to Charles, I hope you will use that courage better next time. Vincent knelt before Family Head Khan and reported, everything has been resolved, Family Head. He held the divine stone in his hand and praised him. Well done, Vincent. Immediately after, the stone was placed into Vincent's hand by him. Vincent immediately turned to the priest and said, Priest, hurry. He quickly took it and began the ritual. O goddess of healing, Gaia, please show mercy and grant us a miracle. After finishing, the priest bit the stone to complete the magic. The severed point of the arm now glowed before Ravan's astonished eyes. Charles, standing outside, could not remain calm and exclaimed Ravan's arm. Julian looked regretful, but still smiled. The divine stone is precious, Vincent responded to him. You are the one who told me to give it to him. Julian closed his eyes and sighed. Still, I cannot help but feel sad. Vincent also agreed. Yes, it is indeed a rare item. Meanwhile, outside the closed door, Wilson pressed his ear to it, trying to eavesdrop on what was happening inside. He smiled secretly and admired. The young master is cool, really cool. Wilson unconsciously recalled what Vincent had said to him at breakfast the day before. There will come a time when you must choose to resist or swear loyalty to me. Now he clenched his fist and thought to himself, of course, loyalty is much cooler. Inside the room, everyone was witnessing. Wilson ran over with a smiling face and called out loudly, Young master, he announced, I will soon begin preparing dinner. Vincent nodded in acknowledgement. Very well. Seeing Wilson's attitude, Julian looked puzzled, wondering what was wrong with him. Vincent leaned back into the chair and looked over, asking, Isn't that what you wanted? For him to see me as the master? Julian exhaled in frustration. Of course not. I have aimed for something greater. The boy looked ahead in surprise. He already brought it, so fast. Vincent regained his composed posture and spoke. Come in. From outside, Dolan stepped in quietly. How have you been lately, young master? He hesitated slightly, as if he had not yet recognized the person in front of him. He is. Dolan respectfully placed his hand on his chest and bowed. Good evening. He introduced himself as Dolan, a cleric of Gaia. Vincent looked up with curiosity. Why has a cleric come here? Dolan immediately explained. I came to express my gratitude for what happened earlier. Upon hearing this, Julian beside him suddenly jerked, as if realizing something. Dolan presented a sparkling crystal in front of him. Please, accept this. Julian recognized in astonishment. This is a magical stone. Dolan explained, I am returning this magical stone to you because today you helped heal young Master Revan. Vincent was curious. Why are you giving this to me? Dolan looked at the stone and smiled kindly, so that those who suffer first can stand up again, and then smile and become happy. This is why I became a cleric. However, seeing young Master Revan today, I ultimately did not know what to say, and I weighed the value of the magical stone against a human life. He extended the stone into Vincent's hand and continued, and, as if mocking me, you voluntarily gave up the magical stone that you had just obtained. Dolan, grateful, held the stone tightly in his hands. Thanks to young Master Vincent. Thanks to you, we were able to reflect on ourselves. Please accept this back. Vincent received the item and humbly responded, I did nothing. Basically, it is the cleric who realized it. However, accepting this is also a reasonable way to show my respect for him. Dolan nodded appreciatively, reached into his robe to search for something. Thank you. Furthermore, here, he produced a card and instructed, if you ever need the help of the shrine, please show them this card. Dolan explained, although this news has not yet reached the public, I have recently become a level 2 cleric. Julian gaped in astonishment. Level 2. He is a level 2 cleric. Vincent glanced, still unclear about what was happening. So that's good, isn't it, Julian? Julian immediately nodded in confirmation. Good, unlimited treatment. Feel free to use the card. Anyway, the card is like telling them to treat me as a level 2 cleric. Vincent, puzzled, replied, but I don't even know the significance of being a level 2 cleric. In front of him, Dolan obediently bowed with all sincerity. Thanks to you, I have learned so much. Thank you. Vincent, appearing as a friendly young master, smiled and said goodbye. Take care. Julian plopped down at the table, arms crossed smugly. See, we have received something much better than Wilson, haven't we? Vincent exhaled and praised. Indeed, you are really good, Julian. The boy, embarrassed, hugged his head. Suddenly you praise me directly like that, it makes me a bit shy, Vincent teasingly said. I wonder if it's because you've been underestimated all your life. But you are easily swayed when praised. Suddenly Julian was startled. Right, speaking of praise reminds me. The boy recounted, my father often ate alone, but once he invited a member of the family to have dinner with him after the great sword tournament. Vincent curiously asked, who was that? Julian immediately mentioned with admiration. The second child, Sister Dea. She achieved an overwhelmingly dominant victory in a great sword tournament. Vincent speculated curiously. You are saying there's a chance that might happen tonight as well? Julian hesitated slightly. 50-50. After that, Vincent wearily rose from his chair. My body isn't very comfortable, but I guess I won't be resting now. Julian tried to explain. I said it's 50-50. Vincent casually dismissed the boy's words. If it's what you said, then it's best to prepare in advance, even if it's just 1%. Hearing that, Julian could only scratch his head and smile awkwardly, feeling embarrassed. Suddenly, Wilson ran in from outside, panicked, shouting, Young master. Vincent looked confused and glanced at him. What's going on? Why are you panicking like this? Wilson, exhausted, gasping for breath, stammered, Master just. Before he could finish, Vincent stepped forward decisively. He invited me. Right. Then let's go. Lead the way. Seeing this, Wilson was bewildered, thinking, what? He predicted this too. Damn, so cool. After a while, he led Vincent to the master's room. Vincent strode comfortably down the wide hallway of the castle. From ahead, Versa suddenly approached and urged, hurry up, Vincent. Startled, he called out, Mother. Versa softly asked, Mother heard that you just achieved an incredible victory at the Great Sword Tournament, right? Vincent bowed respectfully. Thank you. In his mind, he thought, Vincent's biological mother died after giving birth to him. The woman in front of him is his stepmother. Vincent realized that the person before him was Versa Hylame, who, before retiring, had been such a skilled warrior that people nicknamed her the Giant, and now she holds control over everything related to the Adinka family. Versa smiled coldly and reminded, let's go. Your father is waiting for you. The two of them entered the main room together, where the master was waiting. A tense atmosphere immediately filled the room. Master Khan's face darkened. His sharp eyes spoke, Vincent. Suddenly, a ferocious aura surged from his eyes as he called again, Vincent. Vincent felt slightly uncomfortable, struggling to breathe. The pressure weighed heavily on his lungs. He tense-mindedly speculated, I haven't felt like this all day, which means this must be a test for me. He's probably checking whether my strength at the Great Sword Tournament was real or fake. Thinking this, he extended his hand and suggested, I think, Father, there's no need to deliberately put pressure on your son in a private meeting. Master Khan asked in a deep voice, why do you think that? Vincent regained his composure and explained, Mother called Father, Dad, not family master. Master Khan glanced at Versa, and she slightly nodded in confirmation. A moment later, he immediately broke the tense atmosphere in the room and praised, very good, you have realized that. Master Khan spoke frankly, I called you here for two reasons. First, to congratulate you on your victory today. He continued with a second reason that made Vincent startle, and the second is to see how capable Charles Adinka's worries truly are. In his mind, Vincent suddenly recalled the image of Charles, thinking, look, Master, if a third-rank cleric could not heal him, Then how could that technique have been learned through any legitimate method? Something about this is definitely wrong. Suddenly, a heavy pressure weighed down on Vincent's entire body. Versa stood beside him, her expression vacant, with layers of killing intent staring straight at him. Vincent was extremely tense, cold sweat dripping from both cheeks. Master Khan asked, "Could it be an apostle?" Versa shook her head in reply. "It seems not. Didn't the boy himself deny that?" Vincent's whole body was still trembling, wondering, what is this terrifying feeling I'm sensing? Surely it must be Mother's ultimate skill. She possesses eyes that can see through the truth. Master Khan showed even more curiosity. Then what kind of martial art is that? Vincent hasn't used mana, so how could it sever the arm of a second-rank martial artist? Versa answered that sword technique resembles the swordsmanship recorded of Hero King. Vincent anxiously asked, "Hero King in Mother's words is Kajin Samian, right?" Versa nodded in confirmation. Yes, he wielded his sword in strange ways, and it is said it could purge any evil power. She recounted further, people also say his sword could suppress the great demon Davin. Once again, Vincent was startled by Versa's words, thinking to himself, again, once more this fabricated history leaves me speechless. Kajin and the Samian family, what is it they want to achieve by doing this? Versa suddenly stepped forward with a savage smile, wrapping her arms around his shoulders. "So tell Mother." Her entire body exuded such oppressive force that it was hard to breathe, and she asked, "Then the sword like that of the national hero of Samian, how did you learn it, my son?" Vincent froze. Versa gripped Vincent's shoulders tightly, staring at him and asking, "So tell Mother." She bared a savage smile. "My son, where did you learn that sword technique? That swordsmanship is the symbol of the Samian hero." Vincent froze at Versa's attitude, thinking, "Mother, and you don't even speak." He looked toward Master Khan, wondering, "I thought the one who called me here was father, but it isn't." Then Vincent glanced at the mother before him with her deep, piercing eyes, realizing she was the one leading this conversation, and he was being interrogated about the origin of the martial art he used. Just as he was about to speak, Julian from the side urgently intervened. Vincent didn't. Startled and confused, Vincent asked Julian, "What's wrong?" Julian warned, "She can use her eyes to distinguish truth from lies. If you give some clumsy excuse due to lack of knowledge about this era, she will certainly suspect you." Vincent stood still and asked hesitantly, "So what should I do now?" "Tell her I am not her son, but actually an old man from 500 years ago." Julian clung to his shoulder, hesitatingly suggesting, "No, I'll try." Versa in front continued urging, "Come on, quickly tell Mother." Vincent hastily encouraged Julian, "Hurry." Julian held his head in frustration. "I'm too scared of my father. Really afraid she will discover I'm just acting." Suddenly, he suggested, "Julian, just one step." Julian was startled and confused. "What?" Vincent motivated him, "Overcome your fear, just one step. You only need to move one step forward. The rest will come on its own." Speaking with full determination, he said, "Let me take the first step for you." Then Vincent confidently replied to Versa, "I have received a divine command." She seemed still unconvinced and repeated, "A divine command." Versa immediately grew angry and interrogated, "You received a divine command, but did not receive any blessing. Do you not know that in most cases, one cannot receive a divine command without receiving a blessing, unless they are an evil person?" Vincent's heart jumped, and he swore in his mind, "Damn it, Julian didn't tell me about this." Versa urged, "Why aren't you saying anything anymore?" She stepped closer, scrutinizing him. "Are you acting very suspicious? Do you want to face a trial in the Holy Court? Or are you too eager to stand before Judge Jeremiel?" Julian whispered from behind, "Follow my lead." The two of them responded together, "If Mother finds me suspicious, then let's verify it with the temple." In an instant, Versa's eyes froze in confusion. The temple. Vincent took out the miraculous stone from his person. If I were truly an evil person, wouldn't a bishop holding a level 3 magic stone immediately detect it? Versa instantly realized, "Isn't that the magic stone I gave to Dulin?" He nodded in confirmation. Yes, this is what I was given. Versa silently tested with her gaze. It didn't speak. Her eyes showed no reaction. She confirmed once more. Did you really learn that sword technique through the divine command? Vincent raised his hand to his chest, affirming, I have learned many things from the divine command, but I did not learn this sword technique from it. As he spoke, his mind recalled memories. In fact, I had read the records of these mysterious sword moves long ago, but always hesitated whether to learn them or not. Vincent thought, this is what she wants. Julian behind him continued to assist, but I do not want to act like this forever. Although to someone I might seem suspicious, if I do nothing, I would feel too weak. Once again Vincent thought, and it is the truth for me too. Two entities, the truth for both of us, will surpass her eyes. Vincent regained his confident demeanor and firm tone. I feel I must prove something. Only then can I surpass the Samian clan and fulfill the long mission of the Adanka people. He reassured Julian, see, you can do it. The boy was still tense dealing with Versa. I want to show that I am much stronger than those relatives. They glanced at Master Khan, and also to prove it to Father. Vincent explained, because I thought Father would give a correct judgment. The temple has already approved it. Now everything depends only on Father's decision. Master Khan did not respond. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully for a long time, pondering something. Versa, satisfied, secretly smiled. He's rubbing his chin, he doesn't even realize it. But this is what he always does whenever he is pleased with something. After a while, Master Khan spoke in a deep voice, folding his arms, and this was my decision. He made his decision. Vincent, you may continue to practice that martial art. And he and Julian immediately said in unison, thank you, Father. Versa beside him reminded, surely you know that the sword techniques of the hero Kajin are very similar to those of the great evil demon Davin, right? Master Khan remained unflinching, confirming, I know. Versa, looking concerned, analyzed, if we say he uses the hero Kajin's sword techniques, the Samian family will make a fuss, claiming we stole it from them. But if we say it is the sword technique of the great evil demon, then they won't be able to say anything. She spoke in a sympathetic tone. I can understand that your decision has taken all of these things into consideration. Master Khan's expression suddenly showed a flash of anger. I have considered everything. Vincent intelligently grasped the underlying meaning, that it was not simply a warning. She was confirming the master's decision and also letting him know that she had accepted it. And he respectfully bowed, I will remember this. Master Khan stood up and added, Vincent, you have achieved great accomplishments in the Chan Kim tournament. And not only that, you have also affirmed the level of a direct descendant of the Adanka family. He proposed, therefore, I will grant you one wish. What do you want? Vincent did not hesitate and made his request. I want to become stronger. Master Khan strode closer to him. Though it is a good answer, that is something you must achieve yourself. He looked down at his son with a serious gaze, telling me something I can do for you. Julian beside him whispered a suggestion. Tell him you want to enter the library. Vincent immediately stammered his request. I would like permission to enter the family library. Master Khan questioned. Only martial artists of 3 stars or higher can enter the library. Have you reached level 3? He shook his head and explained, not yet. That is why I want to take this opportunity to be treated like a pampered child. Master Khan smiled slightly in satisfaction. Very well. I will allow you to enter the lowest level of the library that a 3-star martial artist can access. He then turned to instruct Versa. Madam, please give Vincent the blood lotus. She obediently nodded. Yes, master. Master Khan crossed his arms and ordered, take it. That is the reward for keeping your promise to me. As soon as Vincent looked at the item, he remembered the blood lotus. That was the sword his father had used in his youth. The very thing he wielded when he first built his reputation in this world. He gazed at the sword in his hand and thought to himself, it is itself the history of the Adanka family. Vincent could not help but marvel. What an amazing sword. Even after being stored away for so long, it is still so sharp. However, he glanced at Julian, who was beaming beside him. The boy pretended to deny it. What are you talking about? I'm not that happy. Vincent quietly agreed. If this alone makes you so happy, then that's not good at all. He smiled confidently and affirmed, because in the future we're going to achieve far more than this. In Julian's heart he secretly rejoiced. At first I was disappointed that you weren't the Spirit King, but now I'm not sure. If I had summoned the Spirit King according to plan, would I have achieved this much? The boy floated outside following Vincent's steps. Even though you're a bit reckless and old-fashioned, I still feel I can entrust my whole being to you. Stepping outside, Vincent commanded, "Let's go, Wilson." The man promptly obeyed. Yes, the young master. Suddenly Versa stepped out and called, "Vincent, to talk with me for a moment." He turned back with a smile and said, "Thank you, mother?" Versa asked curiously, "And because of that, since you have become the winner of the Chan Kim tournament, you will be forced to enter the Blood Citadel according to tradition. Have you thought of how to subdue the Blood Demon yet?" Vincent immediately remembered the Blood Citadel, one of the training academies under the Adenka family. Only those who complete the test at the Blood Citadel can be considered a qualified martial artist. He calculated. The conditions to enter are to be the champion of the Chan Kim tournament and to subdue a low-level demon, the Blood Demon. Thinking this, Vincent glanced sideways to probe Julian. How should I answer? The boy hesitated, telling her you haven't figured it out yet. Vincent did so. I'm still not sure. Versa gave a thin smile in surprise. Oh my, how unexpected. I thought you had planned this long ago. She kept probing. That strange sword technique, it seems in the few times you've used it, it has caused your body great pain, hasn't it? Vincent tensed up slightly and confirmed, "Yes, mother." Versa's expression suddenly darkened as she warned, "If that's the case, then listen to me." She cautioned, "You won't be able to defeat the Blood Demon in a single strike. If you fight in this condition, you'll die." Versa raised her voice to warn, "The Blood Demon cannot be defeated with just one strike." Julian, hearing this, looked puzzled and clung to Vincent. Is she giving us advice? Why would mother? He grinned confidently and speculated, I think stepmother has taken a liking to us. Julian looked at Versa in front of him and asked, why do you think so? Vincent reminded him, haven't you forgotten my story? My enemies threw me into prison and distorted history. He looked at the woman before him, who wore a smile full of hidden meaning, and explained to Julian, with her eyes piercing lies and being trusted by the Lord. She could have accused us at will, but she didn't. Maybe she doesn't like us, but at least she's not hostile toward us. Versa was about to say a few more words about the Blood Demon, but Vincent respectfully bowed and interrupted. Thank you for your advice, mother. I will not disappoint you. In Versa's heart there was a slight surprise at his action. I was trying to explain the characteristics of the Blood Demon, but he left without asking anything. She seemed to ease her suspicion of Vincent, thinking, an extraordinary martial artist who knows neither fear nor hesitation. My heart is moved. Watching Vincent's steps, Versa smiled with satisfaction. Do you see that, Sarvana? She thought, today my son has taken a big step forward on the path of martial arts. On the other side, Wilson was happily singing while hanging laundry, as usual. Today I will support the young master with all my strength. Suddenly, from behind, a voice shouted accompanied by a knock on his head, support my butt. What are you scheming this time? Wilson held his head in annoyance. What did I do wrong? Just then he realized. Sari raised her voice reproachfully, surely plotting trouble for the young master. Wilson hurriedly explained, no, didn't you see I'm hanging the laundry? Sari looked incredulously at the clothesline and asked, really, you're doing it? Wilson exhaled proudly and said, because the young master has changed, I, his direct servant, should change too. Sari looked bewildered and asked, after all, how did the young master do that? Wilson laughed teasingly, you're so old-fashioned. The young master is in the library where only the family martial artists are allowed. In another corner, Julian and Vincent were rifling through piles of books in the library. Vincent kept searching from one volume to another. No, not here. He held his head in frustration. Why isn't there any record from 500 years ago? Julian, with a frustrated expression, continued searching. That's right, only that time period is missing, as if it had been taken away, even if there were anything. The boy speculated. I had predicted it wouldn't be in the records, but at this level, doesn't it seem like someone deliberately erased it? Vincent immediately nodded in agreement. Yes, the history from 500 years ago, the sword techniques, someone erased it or altered it. He slowly tried to recall in his mind. I rescued myself from discrimination later on. Now, I have to increase my swordsmanship skills to defeat the blood demon. Vincent carefully calculated. I need a training method before the Shadow Legend, because I cannot reach the level of the Shadow Legend right now. Julian flew in, interrupting the train of thought. Anyway, the boy turned and analyzed the person who called Father Arslan a child, because Vincent uses the sword techniques of the one known as the Heroic King. Julian's eyes were full of curiosity as he stared at Vincent. Who are you? Vincent hesitated for a moment. If I reveal that I am the great demon Devon, obviously he will be shocked. Should I be worried? A moment later, Vincent shook his head to regain composure. No, that would be very disrespectful to Julian, the previous master of this body, who shares the same destiny as me. He sighed and advised Julian, listen carefully and don't get too flustered. Julian's eyes were filled with curiosity. You must have something going on, right? Vincent's voice began. My name is... Suddenly a headache shot into Julian's head. The boy held his head and tried to repeat. Wait, say it again. What? Vincent was stunned for a moment, then nodded. Okay? However, once again that strange sound intruded into Julian's head, causing him pain. The sound was deafening. Vincent stood up worried. Julian, are you okay? Julian reassured him. I'm fine. You don't need to tell me. I know. I don't want to know anymore. Vincent blankly asked, Really? Suddenly his gaze paused for a few seconds, as if realizing something. Vincent looked at a book in front of him. Curious, what is this? Julian continued to explain. It's a book called First Love with a Water Wheel. The boy looked puzzled. Why would a book like this be among all the mana training books? Vincent picked up the book to examine it. This library is managed by the family. How could a romance novel be mixed in here? The book had just been flung open. Julian was astonished and exclaimed impossible. He grinned smugly. Someone had preserved the secret records of history in each form, the truth of the past. Inside, the lines of the book made the two young men blush. It recorded that it was a hot summer day and I went naked to soak in the water wheel. The tasks I had to do today were exhausting. I even planned to return to the city by noon. Julian turned away, embarrassed. The truth is in this form. Vincent rested his chin and tried to read further. Suddenly Vincent called out, making Julian turn around startled. Julian, Vincent's face was shocked as he pointed to the book. The main character in this novel does not have the Shadow Legend, but they have the power of love. It is not an ordinary novel. He hurriedly explained, this part, the traits were not originally used to channel mana, but their manifestations were caused by the flow of mana. To achieve this, one must bypass all the Shadow Legends. Without the Shadow Legends, the freedom of mana will make all of this possible. Julian was astonished. Impossible. Accumulating mana without the Shadow Legend, that person would die. Vincent clenched his hands confidently and looked at him. Right here, a person accumulating mana without the Shadow Legend but still living channels mana to each defined trait. Knowing that we can clarify all these traits as well. Julian warned nervously. Learning the traits is very dangerous, even with the help of the Shadow Legend. Traits are equivalent to the wealth of a martial artist, so they will not easily teach mana flow to others. Vincent did not deny, right? But we have found a clue to become stronger, he hurriedly urged. Let's try it immediately. Julian was cautious and replied, Didn't you hear me say it is dangerous? As soon as they ran outside, they encountered Sari running anxiously. Young master, her eyes glistening, she asked, Is it true that you defeated Ravan Adinka and were granted Hyatt? Vincent was stunned and looked at Julian, who whispered, A maid named Sari. She had been away for a while because of a family emergency. Vincent instantly recalled her from the past, thinking, So there is still someone who blindly loves the failure Vincent. He nodded and confirmed to Sari. Yes, exactly as you said. She was overjoyed and fell to her knees. Thank God. Sari smiled, wiping away her tears. I thought after the tournament the young master would be ignored even more. Vincent was embarrassed and asked Julian, "Do you know how to comfort a woman?" Julian helplessly shook his head. "It is not in any doctrine about the soul or magic." Vincent had to kneel down to calm Sari. "I apologize for keeping the secret about this. I am practicing diligently to become a master who does not make you ashamed." Sari smiled brightly and called out, "Young master." Suddenly from behind, a familiar voice sounded. "Where have you been?" Sari turned, puzzled and hesitant. It was the young master Ravan. She immediately recognized. Ravan's face was serious. He called out, "I have something to tell you." Vincent. The two quickly went into the room. The space suddenly became tense. Sari stood aside and was also confused by the atmosphere. Ravan remained seated without speaking, his face deep in thought. Julian frowned, confused. "I thought he wanted to say something." Sari had to interrupt. "Do you young masters want to eat sandwiches?" Ravan suddenly stood up, reaching behind to firmly grasp the sword. Julian and Vincent immediately widened their eyes and got ready. Ravan, with a frowning face and fierce gaze, spoke loudly. "I have come to return the favor for the great tournament." Vincent. Julian immediately warned, "Vincent, you." He sprang up and drew his sword from his body. "Damn it. I didn't expect that guy to attack like this." Vincent assumed a defensive stance. Now he knows the tactical skills. The old methods will no longer work. He waved his hand and shouted, "Sari, get out of here immediately." Sari hesitated anxiously and replied, "But I cannot leave you behind." Suddenly, Ravan lowered his voice, startling Sari. "Vincent, I owe you a lot." His sword dropped to the ground. "You forgave my rudeness and gave me your magical stone." Ravan, with a solemn face, recounted, "A coward like me tried to use my father's money to arrange spies there, but then my spy returned, and my father became gentle again." He suddenly knelt on the ground. "I have regained everything, but I cannot repay it." The sword in Ravan's hand was reversed. "Now I am just a coward, but I will not be like that anymore." He was completely respectful, pointing the tip of his sword at himself and bowing. "This is the best I can give you now." Before Vincent, Ravan affirmed, "I swear to always be loyal to you." Sari was astonished, thinking, "Is young master Ravan kneeling?" Vincent smiled in satisfaction, thinking, "In the end he is not beyond redemption." Julian anxiously asked, "Will you trust him?" "This guy is Ravan Adinka." Vincent sheathed his sword and replied, "He placed his sword before me. This action symbolizes giving his life to another as a warrior. This kid is serious." Julian held his head helplessly. Damn foolish martial artists again. Suddenly the boy remembered something and hastily said, "Right." Julian whispered confidently, "All right, I will trust Ravan, but I have a good idea." Vincent nodded in agreement. "If you agree, then I will follow your plan." After that, he placed his sword on Ravan's shoulder. Vincent spoke with the tone of a young master. "I accept your oath. I will also stand by you until the moment you betray me." Ravan's eyes widened in surprise, thinking, "I once doubted, but this really is Hayat Lian. Could it be that the clan chief has already appointed him?" He decided, "In that case I will not regret swearing loyalty." Then Ravan bowed with satisfaction. "Thank you for accepting it." Sari, standing aside, still could not believe it, exclaiming, "Oh my God." She pressed her hands together and moved. He has truly changed. That moment called the defeated Vincent feels like a distant dream. Julian cleared his throat and said to Vincent, "Sorry for interrupting right as you received his loyalty." The boy, curious and eager, "We will try right, to find the blessing trait of the false king from Ravan." A while later in family head Khan's room with Versa, she propped her chin and speculated, "It seems Vincent plans to enter the Blood Citadel next year." Master Khan confirmed, "I know." He glanced to probe how the conquest of the Blood Demon was going. Versa smiled and recounted, "I told the boy the traits of the Blood Demon physiology." In her mind, she carefully recalled, blood demons can only be attacked by 3-star mana or higher when they are not in physical form. The reason the conquest became a rite of passage is to see how someone faces a demon and to prove they might be a 3-star martial artist. Suddenly Versa was startled as if remembering something. Furthermore, she happily recounted, a few days ago at Vincent's house. Versa relayed, Ravan Edinka began staying there. Over there Ravan was instructing Vincent in technique, good, to create a passage loop again. Julian beside him clenched his teeth in worry. Okay, this way, be careful. Earlier Vincent had shown the book he found in the library to Ravan, so he shyly asked again, you want to gain the blessing trait of the false king from me through the method in the book because you cannot imagine it, right? Vincent folded his arms and probed, you will help me. Ravan nodded slightly and set a condition. I will help if this is not a worthless book, even so. He confidently proposed, I will guide the flow of Kai, and you must sit and train right in front of me. Basically, you must trust me with your life. Is that okay? Vincent reminded Ravan, you already promised to be loyal to me. Back in reality, Ravan looked at Vincent with some doubt. Could I trust Vincent with my life if I were in that position? No, if it were me, I could not. Sweat beads formed on his cheeks as he thought, again, you are making me pathetic, Vincent. But not bad. This is the first time losing has made me happy. Ravan carefully observed the flow of Kai around him. The mana flow had spread throughout his body. Who would think someone in the main branch would use such a crazy method? The mana flow grew stronger. Vincent also sweated as he concentrated to control it in his body. Julian hurriedly intervened. Do not act on your own. Slow down. He showed annoyance. Are you always going to lecture me? You are the one who proposed the plan to use Ravan to gain that trait, Julian. Julian was a bit upset and reproached. Why can I not give doctrine when you keep doing as you... Ravan from behind also spoke up. Vincent, you act on your own. You are fast enough. No need to rush. Julian, as if finding an ally, said, see? Vincent stubbornly affirmed. This is how I live. Julian, I cannot gain anything without risking my life. The mana flow in him accelerated. At that moment you should try to risk moving forward. Julian grabbed his head anxiously. Vincent, at this rate you will die. Vincent still strained his eyes and endured. Just a little more, just a little more. The flow will complete if I can connect this. The mana flow in front of him was gradually converging. Ravan panicked and rushed over shouting, don't, Vincent, it's still too early. However, Vincent's mana flow had fully connected. He exhaled in relief thinking, I did it. Just as he finished thinking, suddenly the previously connected mana flow abruptly broke apart. A loud explosion shook the entire room. Ravan was thrown back, crashing into the broken bed. He groaned in pain, struggling to get back up. Over here, Master Khan was discussing with Versa. Still about half a year before the next Blood Citadel opens, right? She nodded. Yes, that's right. Master Khan calculated. Vincent has defeated a 2-star martial artist. Surely for him that's just normal strength. Versa was a bit cautious. Hopefully that's the case. Back over here, Ravan panicked. Are you okay, Vincent? He waved his hand to reassure me. I'm fine. Ravan reproached. You overexerted yourself. It would even take me half a year. You're incredibly fast, but it should at least take 2 months. At the same time, Master Khan suddenly spoke, freezing Versa. 1 month. He cast a cold gaze and commanded Vincent, defeat the blood demon in 1 month. In another corner, Julian tried calling Vincent through the debris. What did I tell you? He emerged shabby from the rubble sighing. I thought I would be reborn again in the end. In the hallway, Raelsa hurriedly strode step by step. She thought to herself, the message from Master to young Master Vincent, that he must complete the transfer ritual within a month. Raelsa's eyes could not hide her worry. He doesn't have much time. Young Master, you must hurry. Thinking this, she approached a room, decisively flung the door open, and called out loudly, Young Master, are you here? Suddenly, Raelsa froze completely, her eyes wide in shock. In front of her was a heap of wreckage. A voice spoke, Grand Minister. Huh. Raelsa's voice trembled. What is this? As soon as she finished speaking, her entire body emitted a sharp, oppressive aura. Young Master, do you want to explain this? Ravon involuntarily shivered as he realized, this person is the Grand Minister, Railsa, Level 7 Radiant Light. Vinchin hurriedly reassured me, don't worry, Grand Minister, I was just meditating a little. Sari immediately angrily interrupted, don't lie. She scolded anxiously. I don't know much about mana, but people don't act like this when meditating. Are you trying to make me worry? Vinchin stammered and looked away. Sorry. Railsa carefully observed his entire expression, thinking his attitude toward others is completely different from the past. She sighed and lowered her voice. I won't ask again since you said don't worry, but... She reminded him, whatever kind of meditation it is, you must hurry. Master has sent you this message. Railsa's expression turned serious as she relayed the message. You must complete the transfer ritual within 1 month. Julian was surprised. As far as I know, Father never set a time limit. Vinchin suspiciously guessed, I understand, so that means... His face broke into a satisfied smile. He had expectations. Before leaving, Railsa added, I will personally act as your guardian until the end of this month. Deep down she hoped, young master, you must defeat it. Thinking this, Railsa encouraged me. I hope you will do your best until then. Ravon sat nearby, glancing over and calculating. Vinchin would need at least 2 months to gain the blessing of the false king, but only 1 month. Vinchin was about to speak. Just 1 month. I had to hurry. But before he could finish, Sari shouted loudly, interrupting, young master. She grabbed his hand tightly, her eyes filled with worry. You must not overexert yourself anymore, okay? Vinchin forced a gentle smile to reassure. As he spoke, he noticed that Sari was surrounded by a layer of radiance. This is mana. Vinchin's face could not hide his astonishment. Sari has a large amount of mana. Sari, still beside him, asked again, okay. Vinchin nodded awkwardly in confirmation. All right, I promise. Now you go. I have a few things to discuss with Ravon. A moment later, Sari and Railsa left, leaving the 3 of them alone in the room. Ravon worriedly advised, 1 month is not enough. I must find another way. Julian beside him was also confused. But now, what should I do? Vinchin pondered for a moment, then summoned his mana veins. He questioned, Ravon, this is the flow of mana, right? Julian was stunned. Vinchin, that is... Ravon gaped in astonishment. You have completed the mana flow. Vinchin nodded in acknowledgement. This time it's done. I can circulate mana as I wish. With this I can accomplish what Father said. Julian admired. Indeed, a capable person can achieve anything. Ravon, still astonished, exclaimed, Oh my. Vinchin spoke confidently. We don't need to wait a month. We will exceed Father's expectations. 2 weeks later, in a forest bathed in golden sunlight, the 3 of them were present, and it seemed Vinchin intended to perform something. He extended both hands and instructed, Now I will demonstrate the traits. Ravon tensed slightly and nodded, his eyes fixed on Vinchin's hands. Julian beside him was equally anxious, sweat trickling down his cheeks. Vinchin turned to warn, It might explode like last time. Can you step back, Ravon? Ravon shook his head confidently. No, I must witness it myself. Your success. Vinchin nodded in agreement. All right. Julian folded his arms in admiration. This one is really loyal. With that, Vinchin focused and summoned the mana flow. I'm starting now. The mana in his body formed a strange floral pattern, emitting a dazzling light from the center. The patterns gradually separated, forming small individual circles. After a short while, the pattern transformed into another design, its aura and power also different. Julian looked around curiously. What is this feeling? From within the space, a faint translucent figure appeared. The massive body of the dwarf king manifested in the space before Julian. His imposing gaze looked directly down at the group below. Julian trembled, wondering, is he the dwarf king? Hello, only a deity like me can see him, right? The dwarf king did not respond. He lifted a hammer engraved with patterns very similar to the ones Vinchin had just created. The hammer was raised high, as if the dwarf king intended to strike it straight down onto the ground. Julian, terrified, covered his head and squeezed his eyes shut at this action. As the hammer descended, a separate space suddenly enveloped Vincent's group. He gradually felt the immense pressure radiating all around him. After a moment, Vincent slowly opened his eyes to investigate. He looked at a large pattern on his chest in astonishment. "This is—" Ravon, standing beside him, cheerfully explained, "The blessing of the Dwarf King. The first trait of defense strengthens the body. It may become tougher." Vincent was amazed inwardly. He really did it. And it didn't even take a month. Yet he had already received the blessing of the Dwarf King. The massive Dwarf King remained standing tall, silent. Julian cautiously glanced upward and reminded, "Let's go home." Vincent looked at his hands with delight. "With this, I can fight against a level 3 swordsman. I have now laid the foundation to subdue the blood demon." He felt grateful. "Thank you, Ravan. It's all thanks to you." Ravon laughed and waved it off. "Only thank me after you kill the blood demon." Suddenly Vincent added, "But I have to ask you one more favor." 2 days later, his carriage was prepared and ready. Vincent, wearing his outfit and wielding the blood sword, full of confidence, arrived at the lair of the blood demon. He looked at Raelsa and explained, "Sorry for the sudden request. Grand Steward, I decided to exceed Father's expectations." She anxiously wondered, not taking full advantage of Father's time limit and arriving 2 weeks early, will he be okay? Vincent was curious about Raelsa's attitude. "What's wrong?" She then recounted, "I have protected those participating in the transfer ritual 3 times. Raelsa's tone was completely serious. "Your father, your brothers, and the others of the Adanka family. No one failed, all of them passed." Her heart was filled with expectation. Sarvana's son cannot be the first to fail. With that, Raelsa added a warning. "Please do not risk yourself with reckless bravery." Vincent, undeterred, smiled confidently to reassure her. "Do not worry, Grand Steward. You will be surprised." The escort carriage for Vincent quickly set off. He sat pensively on the carriage, silently feeling each moment bringing him closer to the demon's lair. Vincent sighed inwardly. Guarding a mission like this is really useless. Julian then explained, "The blood demon will leave behind some items, and she is here only to observe you." Vincent crossed his arms, puzzled. "I really don't understand. Why must it be like this just to prove oneself?" Julian put his hands on his head and sighed. Many things have changed over the past 500 years. Suddenly Raelsa spoke up in front of him. "Have you learned anything about the blood demon yet?" She warned seriously, "To subdue the blood demon, you must have at least 3-star mana or higher. Do you understand? From what I see, young master hasn't even reached level 3 yet." Julian snapped to attention and looked at Vincent. "Now I remember. You haven't even asked about the blood demon?" Vincent furrowed his brow to reassure. "Don't worry." Inwardly, he wondered, did Arslan arrange all of this? Confidence filled him, affirming, "The blood demon will be the first monster I have ever subdued." Then Vincent responded to Raelsa, "That is not the monster I need to know about." She showed slight reproach. "Even with your swordsmanship, you shouldn't let your guard down." Raelsa's expression showed hesitation. "I don't think I'm funny, but—" Vincent cut her off before she could finish. "Grand Steward, why are you trying so hard to help me?" Raelsa immediately explained, "Because I am both the guard and the supervisor for this challenge." Vincent's eyes carried subtle implications as if asking, "Corruption? Are you really trying to hide that?" She recounted with a sympathetic tone, "I have experienced hardship, so I cannot help but think about these things." Vincent continued while Raelsa in front of him showed clear surprise. "Perhaps you think I am too weak to do this deliberately." Raelsa's eyes slightly drooped, remaining silent for a long while without responding. Vincent pressed on. "If you don't want to say, that's fine. You never asked me about my training, so let's consider that fair." At that moment, the horse neighed loudly, signaling their arrival. Vincent surveyed the area. "We're here." Raelsa nodded in confirmation. "Yes." They quickly dismounted from the carriage. Vincent carefully scanned the surroundings. "This is—" He looked at the ruins before him curiously. "The blood demon's lair. Huh." Raelsa beside him provided information. "There isn't an official name for this place, but people usually call it the Ancient Temple." Hearing that, Vincent was even more puzzled. A temple, huh? Raelsa closed her eyes slightly and recounted. It is the memorial place of the first clan leader of Arslan. After defeating one of the remnants of the great demon Devon, he slightly lowered his head, thinking, Arslan again, and the blood demon too. It can't be a coincidence. Just then, Raelsa drew her sword at her side. Well then. Her whole body radiated a halo of light, and she smiled, announcing, I'm ready. Raelsa's sword pointed toward the sky, accompanied by an intense aura. A layer gradually enveloped the space around the light she created. Shortly after, they were all enclosed within a protective barrier. Julian marveled. A mana barrier? Vincent looked up with delight. A barrier at a level that allows only a single monster to pass through. Just then, ahead, a cold gaze filled with murderous intent began to appear. The massive blood demon, holding a scythe in its hand, emerged. Its eyes were full of killing intent, and it charged aggressively toward Vincent. He gripped the blood sword confidently. Grand Steward, watch this. Before the battle, Vincent reminded and reported exactly what you see, the way I demonstrate myself to the Adinka family. At the same time, the blood demon, unable to wait any longer, closed in on him. It raised its large, sharp scythe, ready to strike a deadly blow. Julian urged anxiously, Vincent, dodge, then counterattack. Vincent remained still. No, keeping distance will be better if you face an opponent with a weapon larger than yourself. After a moment, he stepped back to gain momentum. But for us, it's best to approach it. Thinking this, Vincent leapt forward, charging directly at the blood demon. His action caught the creature somewhat off guard. The blood demon quickly changed its stance, raising the scythe to block Vincent's blood sword. Vincent's eyes burned with hatred as he surged forward. Don't think I'll let you swing that scythe freely. Immediately, Vincent and the blood demon exchanged a rapid series of strikes. Raelsa watched as he gradually gained the upper hand, thinking to herself, close combat is very advantageous when facing a heavy weapon. That's always true. She observed carefully while wondering, but for a first real battle at 14 years old, how many could execute it perfectly? Watching him enjoying the fight, Raelsa thought he looks like he's defeated blood demons countless times before. On the other hand, Vincent felt a natural ease in his body, thinking, the attributes of the dwarf king, indeed astonishing. I can even move like this with this body. He launched a series of powerful strikes, each one forming the foundation for discovering techniques in his swordsmanship. Suddenly, Vincent stomped firmly on the blood demon's scythe, leaving it stunned. Moments later, he used his agility to spring back swiftly. Vincent retreated, waiting for the perfect moment. Now, carefully analyzing the situation, this is the right time to increase distance. He speculated, the blood demon is highly excited, yet it has become quite tense after so many defensive maneuvers. Calculating precisely, he struck again at the blood demon. The next attack would be wide, leaving ample openings for him to close in. Vincent was filled with confidence. Facing an enemy with many openings, naturally it would be very easy to find victory. Thinking this, he gritted his teeth and drew his sword. I must apply my attributes to the fullest along with my sword techniques right now. Instantly, his entire body reached maximum potential. A decisive strike slashed straight into the blood demon. Vincent's eyes still radiated murderous intent after the blow. The blood demon let out a roar and condensed into a gem. Moments later, the blood gem rolled to Vincent's feet. He smiled and turned to Raelsa. You saw that, Grand Steward. She was still in shock, mouth agape, unable to respond. Yet deep down, Raelsa could not hide her unease. He really doesn't know why a blood demon cannot be defeated with a single finishing strike. Suddenly, the blood gem on the ground stirred. The familiar murderous gaze opened again. It was because of the blood demon. The blood demon had been lying in wait behind Vincent. It had 2 lives. It swung its sharp scythe directly at him, and he had no idea. Raelsa panicked and shouted a warning, "Young master." Immediately, Vincent cast a wary glance toward her. The moment the blood demon swung its scythe, he promptly ducked to avoid it. Vincent grinned proudly, Even this is just like 500 years ago. Suddenly, from above, the blood demon's scythe came crashing down again, startling him. Vincent leapt back just in time to dodge the lethal strike. Even though he had seen it before, he could not hide his astonishment. Too fast. Vincent carefully observed, thinking to himself, looking closer now, its appearance has changed too. Have these bastards evolved over the past 500 years? Raelsa beside him tensed, thinking, a blood demon goes berserk after resurrection, and with it, its speed and strength increase. The blood demon switched its attack, launching its flaming hand toward Vincent. He had to quickly jump to avoid it as debris flew from the ground. Vincent cautiously retreated to the edge of the wall, so dangerous. He watched the blood demon charging while screaming, the escape path along the wall blocked. The blood demon swung its sharp scythe, slicing the wall effortlessly. Vincent gritted his teeth and dodged with difficulty. At the same time Julian called out, Vincent. The reminder made Vincent turn in surprise. The temple. Julian worriedly said, not good, we have to retreat and change plans. Vincent shook his head. No, not yet, we have to make it lower its guard first. Carefully analyzing, he thought, it's thinking the same, trying to corner us against the wall for a decisive strike, and once it's ready, it will unleash that finishing blow. Thinking this, Vincent calculated, at that moment, we will execute the plan. Outside, Raelsa fidgeted, watching every shift in the battlefield. She clenched her hands, trying to steady herself. I am the overseer of the transfer ritual. If I interfere, it means the young master has failed. Raelsa gripped her sword tightly, hoping, please, don't let me end the future of Sarvana's son, Miss Sarvana. Memories and words about Sarvana flooded her mind. She's truly strong. Staying here is such a waste of her potential. At that time, she had recruited Raelsa. We were walking on the path of adventure to become martial warriors. Would you like to join? Raelsa recalled, coming from a declining family, I survived by stealing at the national border. At that moment, Raelsa looked up at Sarvana with bewildered eyes, facing such a terrifying monster that shocked me. But she invited me to join. I even thought she was a crazy woman. However, she smiled kindly. Right, I forgot to introduce myself. I am Sarvana, pleased to meet you. Sarvana turned to look at the two behind her and asked, Khan, Versa, you agree as well, right? Khan turned coldly. I don't care, Versa teased. You really do as you please. Even if I didn't agree, you'd still insist on doing it, right? Raelsa felt a heavy thought. Perhaps I had lost my mind after being injured in battle. Maybe I was too tired of that life of pillaging. She grasped Sarvana's hand, or perhaps I was influenced by her audacity. Raelsa's eyes, filled with emotion, looked at the three before her. Finally, I accompanied them on the path of adventure to become the legends of Adinka. Then, another memory surged into Raelsa's mind. At that time, she was facing a ferocious orc. Raelsa calmly raised her sword. I apologized, orc. Suddenly, from nowhere, a graceful purple hair appeared. Sarvana unexpectedly jumped down from above. I am not the main character. She smiled brightly and swung her sword. Raelsa, you are the best. Sarvana's sharp sword swiftly struck the orc's head in an instant. She landed lightly yet majestically, making Raelsa marvel. She is so strong and beautiful. Afterwards, Sarvana raised her hand mischievously and announced, mission accomplished, and Raelsa felt as if her strength had been replenished. She possesses a power that makes others smile. Her eyes gazed in wonder at the passionate warrior before her, in her hopeless life. Deep inside, Raelsa admired. She is a ray of light. She praised Sarvana. You are the truly amazing one, Miss Sarvana. However, on one stormy night, a misfortune occurred. Sarvana tightly closed her eyes on the bed, covered with a white cloth. Raelsa's expression darkened, holding a baby in her arms. She called out with tearful, sorrowful eyes, Miss Sarvana. In her arms, a newborn child kept crying in short, wailing bursts. Raelsa looked at its innocent, pitiful face. She told herself, right, this is not the time to be sad. This is the child Miss Sarvana left behind. Despite the 2 streaks of tears on her own face, Raelza resolved that she would protect this child from the harsh life of being a direct descendant of Adinka, until it became a martial warrior worthy of admiration. But a long time later, when Sarvana's child had grown, Hina arrogantly flung Vinchin to the ground. "Don't pretend we are friends, loser brothers." She looked down in contempt. "You are useless. Why don't you try speaking politely to me instead?" Vinchin could only helplessly comply. "Yes, sister." Hina laughed joyfully. "Just because I said so, and you actually did it." Raelza, observing everything from the side, thought over the 14 years countless times. What could I really expect from this loser Vinchin? Should I leave Adinka? And at that moment, when Wilson was eavesdropping outside the door, he looked so cool. Raelza suddenly appeared behind him, radiating deadly intent. "You acted foolishly in such a creatively reckless way, Wilson." Wilson trembled and stepped back, explaining, "It's not like that, great minister. I was just, as the core, for Master Vinchin." His voice stammered, announcing the young master had been recognized by the family head. Back in the present, Raelza tensely followed Vinchin's every step. "Finally, I'm beginning to see hope. Don't give up, young master." There, the blood demon continued its relentless attacks on Vinchin. Its flaming scythe continuously swung lethal strikes. "You cannot give up here." Vinchin was unnaturally calm, carefully observing the movements of the blood demon. In an instant, he seized the opportunity, calling out loudly, "Right now!" As his voice rang out, Ravan immediately rushed from behind. Ravan. Raelza, shocked, wondered, the one who just ran past. Could it be? At the same time, the blood demon's scythe was blocked by a sword. None other than Ravan's sword had intercepted the blow. Raelza instantly realized that the person in front of her now was Ravan Adinka. Before Raelza, Ravan was using his body to block the blood demon. She was shocked to realize Ravan Adinka is intending to help the young master fight the blood demon. On the other hand, Vinchin encouraged, "I'm counting on you." Ravan struggled to hold his ground and instructed, "Defeat it before I fall." As soon as he finished speaking, Vinchin immediately sat down on the ground, holding his hands out in front of him. His face darkened, his entire body enveloped in a dense flow of mana. Raelza panicked, sweating profusely. "Oh no, he's crazy. Why is he meditating right now?" She was anxious. If Ravan is knocked down and the young master takes even a small hit, he will die. The blood demon in front of Vinchin was still trying to reach him. Ravan provoked it to draw its attention. "Where are you looking? I am the one challenging you." Then he gripped his sword tightly. Ravan decisively swung, knocking the blood demon back. It roared furiously with ear-piercing screams. The blood demon struck again with a series of slashes. Ravan activated his taunt skill. "If you don't lose to Vinchin, then you will be my prey." Just as he finished speaking, the blood demon, enraged, repeatedly struck at his great sword. Ravan taunted disdainfully, "Weaker than I thought. Is that all you've got?" Before he could finish, the blood demon rushed forward with a flurry of slashes, catching him off guard. Ravan gritted his teeth anxiously. "Oh no, the sword can't have the iron body effect. It's cracking." He realized the demon's scheme. "This bastard, it's aiming at my sword." In an instant, the sword in Ravan's hand was shattered into pieces by the blood demon. He was stunned, cursing silently. "Damn it." Ravan looked up at the scythe coming at him. "Without a sword, how can I protect Vinchin?" With no other choice, Ravan used his hands to block the scythe. His whole body trembled as he tried to resist the scythe approaching his face. However, Ravan's strength alone was not enough, and he gradually grew exhausted. Summoning his last bit of strength, Ravan shouted, "Vinchin!" Suddenly, his voice rang out along with a piercing strike. "Well done, Ravan." Vinchin had truly returned with his new strength, striking the blood demon back. It took the critical hit and quickly withdrew into the blood gem. However, this time, the blood gem developed cracks. It immediately shattered into tiny fragments. Finally, before the two of them, the blood demon was truly defeated. Vinchin smiled. "Thank you, Ravan." He gave a faint laugh and sighed. "Wow, I suddenly feel sorry for that fierce blood demon." Raelsa approached from behind. Was that your plan, young master? Her voice still carried concern. Congratulations, but I'm not sure the family head will be okay with you getting help. Didn't you say you wanted to surpass father's expectations? Vincent calmly whispered a criticism. You're too hasty. He analyzed carefully. You created this mana barrier for only one monster. It will only last for a while. From above the barrier, a large hand gradually appeared, because the first one had died. Suddenly, another blood demon appeared from somewhere. The next one will target us. Vincent's expression darkened as he calmly reminded himself, prove yourself. He took out the mystical stone from his body, affirming, now I will prove myself. With that, Vincent bit and shattered the mystical stone in his mouth. His whole body was immediately enveloped in a powerful flow of mana. Vincent carefully analyzed his opponent. Even with my upgraded body, I can only use my sword skills twice. He calmly waited for the blood demon to charge. The reason I must meditate is to calculate the effect of the mystical stone. Vincent raised his sword, using all of his concentration and the endurance of his body. In an instant, he thrust the tip of his sword straight, striking directly at the demon's weak point as it was healing its wound. The blood demon continued its old move, withdrawing into the blood gem. Moments later, it reappeared in a different form, facing such an opponent with many openings. Vincent decisively slashed across with a strong stroke. I can perform sword techniques much more easily now. After that strike, the blood gem and the blood demon vanished into nothingness. Raelsa watched the scene in astonishment. She closed her eyes and silently thought, it seems I have nothing to worry about. Deep inside, Raelsa felt relieved. Excellent, young Master Vincent. Suddenly, he coughed up a stream of fresh blood. Julian, worried, exclaimed, what kind of sword technique is this, that your body is like this after using it only a few times? Vincent, slightly weak, replied, meditation, the mystical stone, without either of these, it cannot be done. Julian carefully advised, lie down, even if you faint, Raelsa will take care of you. Vincent refused, determined to resist to the end. Just like at the Grand Sword Assembly, Julian, the true victor, is the one who can endure until the end. He staggered, exhausted and unsteady. I will never fall. At that moment, Raelsa approached with a gentle smile and called, young master. Suddenly, a surge of energy appeared from nowhere, surrounding their location. A maximal magic circle appeared directly above Vincent's group. Rivon looked up in confusion and blinked. Even Julian and Vincent did not know what was happening around them. Raelsa tensely held up her sword. This is a summoning circle, but such a thing has never appeared in the transfer ritual. The surrounding rocks suddenly gathered together. An eye, filled with murderous intent, slowly opened from the darkness. Raelsa, on high alert, hesitated as she speculated. This is, before them now, a gigantic stone serpent appeared. It was an ancient guardian. Raelsa cautiously observed the ancient guardian before her. A guardian this large, still undiscovered until now, likely meant it had been created along with the temple. Thinking this, she raised her sword forward and shouted, I am a subordinate of the Adanka family, Raelsa Baladian. Declare your mission to the main line of the Adanka family and show respect. The ancient guardian did not relent. It let out a piercing roar. Raelsa's heart raced in worry. Useless. It is no longer lucid due to age. She urgently shouted, young Master Rivon, please escort young Master Vincent to retreat. Rivon helped Vincent to his feet and nodded, understanding. Julian flew right behind, pulling him along, hurrying quickly. At this moment, only Raelsa remained to face the ancient guardian. She exhaled a cold breath, focusing all her strength to use the Baladian sword technique, Part 7. With a loud crash, a massive shockwave erupted, causing rocks and earth to explode, leaving the three who had just left staring in astonishment. They turned back, eyes wide, searching for Raelsa. Rivon shouted anxiously at the rubble in front of him, Great Minister. Unexpectedly, the mouth of the fallen ancient guardian slowly turned to stone. In an instant, its entire body was encased in ice and snow by Raelsa's east wind technique. cracks appeared across the guardian's body. Moments later, Raelsa forcefully swung her sword, shattering it into pieces that leapt outward. Ravon's eyes widened in awe as he watched, that is, deep inside. He admired her, a 7th-level radiant rank. Beside him, Vincent weakly mustered his voice, not yet. Ravon turned sharply, startled. Vincent. Using all his strength, he warned, over there. With that, Vincent swung his sword in a straight arc toward Raelsa. However, the strike only hit a stone pillar behind her. Julian approached anxiously, asking, Vincent, what are you doing? At this moment, he had collapsed, despite Ravon shouting, Hey Vincent. Raelsa pondered. The strike went through empty space, but why? To say something to me, perhaps? Suddenly, her eyes widened as if realizing something. It was, on the stone pillar just now, another creature perched there, a guardian, its true form. Raelsa stared in shock at the guardian, wondering, when did it escape? The young masters are in danger. The guardian approached closer to Ravon, baring its bloodthirsty teeth. Raelsa immediately sat down, activating the blessing attribute of the galaxy's sovereign. She flew forward, her whole body emanating icy cold air. In the blink of an eye, Raelsa reached in front of Ravon. She swung her sword down with force, cleaving the guardian in two, startling Ravon. Raelsa asked, Are you two all right? Julian's eyes widened in astonishment. So fast? Ravon, sitting beside him, still bewildered, replied, I think so. In Raelsa's mind, she pondered, I couldn't see the guardian's true form, but the young master saw it and warned me. At that moment, Vincent, lying on the ground, noticed, Great Minister, look. He pointed toward the chest in front of them and guessed, I think that is what the guardian was protecting. Shortly after, when the cold ice layer created by Raelsa melted, she cautiously approached and opened the chest to examine it. Vincent wondered, what's inside? Raelsa hesitated, replying, This is... She held up a piece of dragon bone from the chest. It seemed to be a relic left by the first family head, Arslan. Julian excitedly exclaimed, Dragon bone, it's an extremely rare magical material, an invaluable treasure. Vincent lightly smiled and speculated, It seems this is why Arslan created the transfer ritual. Raelsa placed the dragon bone in front of him respectfully, saying, Young master, please accept it. She bowed in acknowledgement. Among all the Adenka who came here, you are the one who found it, so it belongs entirely to you. Her voice was full of admiration. It is my matter. Vincent had no choice but to draw his sword and propose, then do this. He decisively split the dragon bone in front of him in two. Vincent smiled, offering one half to Raelsa. Now you will be my accomplice. He acknowledged, I couldn't have obtained it without you, so take it. Raelsa, moved, smiled gently. Thank you, young master. Elsewhere, where swords were plunged into the barren ground, Khan, the family head, stood within the Adenka family tomb, the sword tomb. Raelsa suddenly stepped forward to report, Master, I have returned after young Master Vincent completed the transfer ritual. Master Khan reminded her, this should be reported to the church. Raelsa immediately explained, what I saw was far more astonishing, so I came to you. Master Khan's expression showed a flicker of interest. I am very eager to hear it. Raelsa quickly recounted everything. Do you remember the hostile Ravon Adenka? He was influenced by the young master and even risked his life to block the blood demon's attack. Moreover, young Master Vincent successfully subdued it. Master Khan closed his eyes and asked in return, so doesn't that mean the boy couldn't do it alone and had to use cunning? But Raelsa's next words made him widen his eyes in astonishment. Then he defeated the blood demon alone. She brought the piece of dragon bone to report, and added that he had also found the dragon bone left by the first family head Arslan. This is one half that the young master shared with me. Master Khan could not hide his surprise. Shared. Vincent did it himself. Raelsa nodded in acknowledgement. Yes, the young master cut it with his sword himself. Suddenly Master Khan continued, startling her. There's one more thing, Raelsa. He commanded sternly, smash the piece of dragon bone. Seeing Raelsa looking bewildered, Master Khan repeated, that is the order of the family head. Break it immediately. Railsa could only obey, yes. Immediately, Railsa attempted to destroy the piece of dragon bone. Seeing that it remained unharmed, both she and Master Khan were stunned. Railsa had no choice but to summon a flow of mana, telling herself, "Ancestors of the Adanka, please forgive this disrespect." She then used an extremely powerful eastern wind snow slash. However, the piece of dragon bone only turned to stone and did not crack at all. The ice layer on the outside melted in an instant. Railsa exclaimed in astonishment, "How is this possible?" "I gave it my all." Master Khan turned away and analyzed. "You would have to be a master blacksmith to break dragon bone." His eyes darkened with deep thought. "Father." Master Khan looked at the sword tomb before him and thought to himself, "It seems my turn will come soon." Then he instructed Railsa, "It seems Vincent has special strength. Take care of him." Master Khan's gaze was solemn, as if hiding something in his heart. "My son." Wilson ran over crying loudly, complaining, "Young master." Sari, holding a teapot, reminded him, "Wilson, the young master needs rest after that battle. Be quiet for a moment." Wilson, with a worried expression, hurriedly asked, "Young master, do I really have to go to Blood City?" Sari immediately replied to him, "Of course. Are you going to let him go alone?" Wilson's face filled with fear as he continued, "But Sari, Blood City is full of terrifying monsters and martial artists." Sari teased with a smile, "So Wilson of the Jianghu is afraid of monsters, huh?" Wilson blushed and stammered, unable to form a sentence. "That," Vincent, holding a teacup, asked thoughtfully, "Julian, haven't you noticed?" Julian, curious, replied, "Notice what?" Vincent directed his gaze at Sari, the flow of mana from Sari's body. Julian seemed unable to discern Vincent's intention and doubted, "What mana?" The boy widened his eyes and denied, "I can't sense it, even though I've been with Sari much longer than you. If it were true, I should know." Vincent focused and thought, "I have seen a similar flow of mana 500 years ago. Could it be?" Then he cautiously asked, "Sari, what is your family name?" Sari hesitated slightly. "Yes, it is," she reported. "Hisley. I am from the lost Hisley family." Vincent immediately knew the answer in his heart. "I knew it. Sari possesses a magical body." Unlike him, Julian looked confused. "Hisley, a magical body? I've never heard of that before." Vincent explained, "The Hisley family studied the body and mana extensively. They are among the ones who discovered the sacred core." He continued, "People in the Hisley family have a trait called a magical body, similar to the sacred core, allowing them to absorb mana and use it proficiently." Julian was startled as if he had understood. "So that means," Vincent smiled subtly and confirmed, "if a body is full of mana, it can block the dying sacred core." He questioned Sari, "Do you know anything about the Hisley family, such as your ancestors?" Sari was somewhat confused. Wilson immediately interrupted, "Young master, do you know why Hisley is here?" In an instant, Sari became quiet and softly said, "My grandmother passed away a long time ago. She was the only Hisley I knew." Seeing this, Vincent waved it off. "Forgive me." Sari gestured. "It was fine. It's okay. You have been through much already, from the True Sword Conference to the transfer ritual." Julian, resting his chin, pondered, "But why would a family with such skills perish?" He speculated, maybe something similar happened to the Samian family. Julian nodded in agreement. "That makes sense, if they tried to hide the existence of the sacred core." Vincent recalled the past. The Hisley family was killed to cover up the trail. Suddenly Sari seemed to remember something. "Wait, there's another person. She just passed away recently." But her words left Julian stunned. The young master's mother, Princess Sarvana, was... The boy was astonished. "I've never heard of this before." Vincent also looked surprised and replied, "I never knew about this." Sari hurriedly explained, "Perhaps it's because no one spoke of Princess Sarvana." She recounted, "The family had always felt sorrow when hearing anyone mention the princess's name." On the other side, family head Khan stood silently, gazing into the distance, his mind filled with thoughts. Sari bowed her head in gratitude. The princess employed everyone without discrimination, even those from extinct families. Wilson added, "We are all here thanks to Princess Sarvana." He mentioned Raelsa's past, especially the Grand Minister. She was once at the bottom of society until Princess Sarvana personally brought her into the Adanka family. Julian smiled proudly. Mother was truly an extraordinary person. Vincent nodded in agreement. Indeed, that also means Raelsa taking care of us is thanks to our mother. Suddenly, Raelsa knocked on the door from outside. "Young master, are you here?" Vincent was about to speak when Raelsa interrupted. Young Master Ravon was leaving. Outside, Ravon was already waiting for Vincent. He wondered, "You are leaving?" Ravon explained, "I have defeated the blood demon, and I cannot stay here forever." Vincent had to speak up with a request. "I have one more thing I need your help with." Ravan, delighted, immediately nodded. "All right, tell me." Hearing this, Vincent instructed, "I want you to investigate the history of the Hisley family from 500 years ago." It seems someone wanted to cover this up. Ravan, a bit curious, teased, "Things like first love with a watermill, huh?" Vincent understood and nodded in acknowledgement, something like that. The two of them shook hands to make an agreement. "All right, leave it to me." Then Vincent said his farewells. "See you later, Ravon," and the boy smiled and promised, "I will become even stronger. I don't want to embarrass you either." After a while, Ravon quickly waved and left. Vincent watched his steps and asked Raelsa, "Grand Minister, I have been told about my mother. It seems your kindness toward me is to repay a debt of gratitude." She did not deny it and replied, "Yes." Vincent turned to make a request. "I have something I want you to help me with as Vincent Adanka, not as the son of Sarvana Adanka." Raelsa asked curiously, "What is it?" His expression was full of determination. "Training me until I reach the Blood City." He explained, "I am asking this not because I am my mother's son, but as a martial artist." Raelsa closed her eyes and pondered. "Princess Sarvana, can my loyalty to you be transferred to young Master Vincent from now on?" She thought of Sarvana's smile and silently said, "I will never be able to hear your answer. Forgive me for my weak decision." Then Raelsa smiled solemnly and affirmed, "I will not go easy on you." Vincent, with an amused and confident gaze, replied, "I rely on you, Raelsa." A few days later, Raelsa and Vincent arrived at the training grounds. Raelsa suggested, "You can learn attributes without the teaching scroll, but that requires you to have a mana attribute circle." Vincent immediately agreed, "All right." Then Raelsa drew her sword from its case. "All right, but since you asked me as a martial artist, I will not simply tell you everything." Vincent looked at her hands curiously. "You're not going to use the sword from the transfer ritual." Raelsa replied calmly, "The Black Moon sword. You will meet it when the time comes." She took a stance, pointing her sword forward. "You still have 5 months before reaching the Blood City. If you can strike me even once, I will show you that attribute." With that, Raelsa smiled challengingly. "Try hitting me with your strange sword technique." Vincent panicked and raised his hands to stop her. "Wait, don't you see Ravon? A permanent injury would be bad." But in the blink of an eye, Raelsa had closed the distance with a freezing aura, looking at him. "Do you see me as young Master Ravan?" Vincent's eyes widened in surprise at her speed, this attribute. He thought for a moment and swung his strike forward, yet Raelsa quickly dodged. She carefully analyzed it. "I also know quite well the strength of that sword path, which is why I am planning not to give you the chance to use it." Vincent was still unsettled. "She just looked straight into my eyes. This is too dangerous." Raelsa landed and spoke in a calm tone. "I've heard that you are a friend of Priest Dullen. We will ask him for help when necessary." Vincent, breathing heavily, asked, "Are you too ruthless, Raelsa?" Hearing this, Raelsa smiled indifferently and said, "Haven't I told you? I will not go easy on you." 1 week later, the two of them continued training day and night. Vincent's speed had improved day by day as he tried to keep up with Raelsa. Vincent stepped back, trying to watch Raelsa's movements. However, she suddenly appeared behind him, catching him off guard. "You've been preparing for this a long time." A loud explosion shattered the rocks and dirt, making the air hazy. Railsa slowly stepped forward. 2 attack techniques, any more, and you will be overexerted. Let's stop here. Vinchin, lying on the ground, gasped and complained. That's too harsh. Railsa calmly sheathed her sword. You will get better soon. I will summon Sari and Wilson. She looked at the sword and thought, this sword is about to break. I wonder how many swords I've had to replace over the past few days. Immediately, Railsa thought of Hansen. I need to tell this to the blacksmith. That night, she went to speak with Hansen. It seems your master title is the only thing you've lost since the last time we met. Her voice serious and reproachful. It would be a tragedy if you forged nothing but worthless swords for the Adinka family. In front of her, the burly man working hard at the flames to forge a sword was the family's blacksmith, Hansen.